All right, welcome to the Appropriations Committee. We have a number of bills today, starting with House Bill 892, and we are very pleased to be joined by our Speaker of the House, Speaker Adrian Jones. Madam Speaker, welcome, and I know you have a panel, Jeremy Baker, Daniel Waite, and Denise Gilmore, so they're certainly welcome to join you at the front. Madam Speaker, welcome.
Nice to be in appropriations.
Your old committee. Yep.
Whenever. Start now? Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the Appropriations Committee. For the record, I'm Speaker Adrian Jones, and I'm here today to testify in support of House Bill 982, which would establish and reinstitute programs to help solve our staffing crisis. As you all have heard during your budget hearings, under the watch of the prior administration, the state's vacancy rate ballooned to historic proportions, leaving over 13% of our executive branch positions unfilled. House Bill 982 seeks to lower that vacancy rate by supporting our state workers and instituting targeted programs to fill needed positions. I'd like to thank staff at the Department of Human Services, along with our friends at ASME for their assistance on the bill, whom you'll be hearing from later. They have been and will continue to be important resources as this bill and others move forward. First, the bill would bring back the annual supplemental retirement match of $600 for all participating state employees. If you make at least $600 in contributions to your retirement, then we will match you up to $600. Employers across the country are using supplemental retirement account contributions to attract employees. We need to keep pace. Second, we have all heard how those with crushing student loan debt forego saving for retirement to pay their student loans. Therefore, the bill would also require the state to contribute $600 to your retirement if you have paid down your student loans by at least $600. Third, the bill creates a pilot program to fill frontline positions at our Department of Human Services, which I will refer when I reference that agency as DHS. Specifically, the pilot program requires DHS to partner with local school systems to fill jobs that require a high school degree. The state then provides tuition assistance and other mentorship opportunities to then allow an individual to progress within DHS's existing personnel structure. This program will look to attract hundreds of new employees to DHS and put them on a path to degree and certification programs that they help Marylanders access the services and resources their families need. Finally, the bill provides student loan repayment assistance for our parole and probation agents who are required to have 4-year degrees. The vacancy rates at parole and probation, as well as the Department of Corrections, are something we've talked about more than once over the last few years. While there isn't a single silver bullet to solving our staffing crisis, I know that this legislation, along with the actions of the new administration, will take us down a path that will rebuild state government. I don't think we face a more important task this term than tackling our vacancy rates. State government has to work effectively for the taxpayer of the state. With that, Mr. Chair, thank you for your time. and I urge a favorable report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. Waite?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Daniel Waite. I am Acting Deputy Secretary for Administration at the Department of Human Services. First, I want to thank Speaker Jones for her leadership in this bill. For the Department of Human Services, this bill could not come at a better time. As we have shared during a number of our budget hearings, staffing is a front and center issue for the Department of Human Services. In one of my roles, I oversee the function of human resources at the department, so I have a very clear view of the crisis that we are currently in and that really has come out of the COVID hiring freeze and the impact of the labor market after COVID, that post-COVID labor market where we've all heard of the Great Resignation and those issues with people refocusing their work-life balance in a different way. So we have spent a lot of time over the last year restabilizing our vacancy rate. The challenge is that we've established an equilibrium point where we're hovering now sort of at a 15% vacancy rate in the types of positions that this bill specifically addresses, our frontline public-facing workers. Clearly, that is not sustainable. From the perspective of the department, this bill will set the stage to develop a pilot program which will introduce high school students to the world of human services work and the rewards that come from that and being a part of the community and being part of the bigger whole of the community. We know that this approach can work. We recently, over the last year, changed specs in our family investment and child support areas to allow us to hire high school students. And we are seeing great success with that. We are seeing turnover rates of about 10% less turnover in that population versus our bachelor's degree population. So we know that we're bringing people in and they're sticking there. In addition, this bill would create a true career path through the department where we could certainly envision a day when somebody starts in our Family Investment Administration straight out of high school, takes advantage of the scholarship program created, goes on to get their bachelor's degree, moves into a work classification that requires that, and then continues on with the growth through our department. The other thing that I'm going to note in terms of staff morale within DHS is that it will not be lost on our staff that this bill includes them in a benefit that other frontline workers have had access to in the past. We have to be very clear and understand that our workers were out there during the pandemic, often going into houses that social distancing was not an option in because certainly child abuse and neglect does not work on a time frame and it doesn't stop because of a pandemic. So this bill absolutely honors our workforce in the understanding that they too are first responders. Recruitment success hinges on the power of creative strategies and partnerships. It's really exciting for me to be sitting here next to Denise and to be able to share a panel with her. This bill will allow for a renewed focus on culture and values that puts the employees' needs front and center. The tuition assistance payback provisions of this bill are critical to our staff. Many of our staff who are social workers have master's degrees and enormous amounts of student debt, so this bill will certainly help with that. With that, I am eager to endorse this bill, and we encourage a favorable report on the bill. Thank you so much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir. We'll take questions for the whole panel. Ms. Gilmore?
Yeah, sure. My name is Denise Gilmore, and I'm a legislative director with AFSCME Council 3. We represent nearly 30,000 state employees across our agencies in the state and in higher education. We too are very supportive of HB 982, and we're extremely grateful to the Speaker and to this committee for continuing to make rebuilding our state government a top priority issue this year. You know, for the last 8 years, many of us feel like our state government was hollowed out and, a conscious decision. And to be able to sit here now, today, and in a collaborative spirit to look in how we can start to address the issues that we now have with staffing truly means a lot to us. We look forward to continuing to work with this committee and the Speaker's office and the new administration on making sure that we are putting forward really great recruitment initiatives like this, but that we are also looking at more ways that we can expand retention. What we really like in this bill is that we should be looking at opportunities to see where high school graduates can enter state service. Many of our members started their careers with the state right after graduating from high school. That state job was the thing that gave them the ability to have income security, have health benefits for their family, have the opportunity for retirement security one day. We know that these state jobs can be pathways to the middle class for so many Marylanders, and we're appreciative of the ability to work with the Speaker and this committee to keep expanding that. We also know that there's a sector of folks that graduate, right after college, and they want to enter public service out of a spirit of wanting to help people. We're very glad that this bill proposes that our parole and probation officers get some assistance with student loans that they incur after, coming to work for the state. So we're very thrilled with this bill. We urge the committee to provide a favorable report. This is an excellent start in helping us rebuild our state government. And again, just thank you very much for continuing to make this a top priority issue.
Just here for questions.
Okay, I thought so. Any questions for the Speaker or her panel? I don't see any. I think it's because this is a great bill, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
And we appreciate, in all sincerity,
They're scared.
a little bit of both. Well, honestly, we appreciate you making
Thank
this
you,
front and center
surely.
issue, because this is not the sexiest issue, but it is certainly the most important
It's
issue.
important, very important.
Absolutely. And we look forward to getting the bill on the move as soon as we can.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for being with us. Committee, we need to now turn to a quick vote. House Bill 295, we need to reconsider that bill to pass it in the form that we had intended. So I need a motion to reconsider in a second.
Second.
All right, the bill, all in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The bill is now back before us. I believe Delegate Smith, you have an amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The amendment that should be in front of you, requested by the sponsor, matches the bill to the version of the bill we passed last year. Specifically, the amendment instead requires each institution of higher education to adopt a policy for withdrawing for extenuating circumstances, and that the policy should have a provision for when reimbursement of a fee is appropriate, specifically when the student's ability to acquire an education is impeded. This is the posture we intended to vote the bill in on Friday, and is in the posture the committee voted the bill unanimously out last year. I move the amendments.
All right, questions on the amendments? Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The amendments pass. Is there a motion on the bill?
Second.
All right, the bill's back before us. Because it was unanimous last time, I'm going to take a voice vote on this, if there's no objection. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The bill is unanimous. We also need to suspend the rules so that we can get the bill to the floor by Friday. Is there a motion to suspend the rule?
Second.
All right. Oh, it's just so that we can move the bill report within 3 days. Is there a motion on that? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Passes. Beyond 3 days was the motion. All right, we'll get back to our bill hearings. House Bill 923, that's my bill. I want to invite my panel forward, Patrick Hogan, Matt Power, Brad Phillips, Connor Curran, Sandra Curtinitis, and Amanda Felix. Welcome up. We have a large panel here, so I will give my testimony from here, if that's okay. So there's enough room. Dr. Curtinitis, good to see you. Entire panel. All right, committee, the bill does 4 things. The bill makes the Secretary of Higher Education a position appointed by and serving at the pleasure of the governor. I don't know if you noticed, we don't have an MHEC secretary yet, currently a board appointed. I want to make sure that this is under the purview of the governor. Second, the bill for the next award year makes changes to the award eligibility for the GA award. The GA award, if the guaranteed access grant that provides 1,000% of need when combined with the federal Pell Grant for the state's lowest income students. The maximum award for 23-24 cycle was $20,000. This interim, the Office of Program Analysis within DLS did a study of the GA and EA program and found that a number of the requirements of the program act as barriers to entry. So the bill is trying to eliminate some of these barriers on a recipient, including a GPA of 2.5 to 4.0. They begin college within 1 year of completing high school. I want to make sure that adult learners are eligible for these grants. Remove the requirement that they be under the age of 22, again, so that some of our adult learners can avail themselves, and have successfully completed a college preparatory program in high school. The feeling is once they're in college, they've made it, they've gotten in, they should be eligible for these grants. Third, the bill makes changes to how Promise Scholarship is awarded and makes the program a campus-based award, meaning a student won't have to go through MHEC to receive an award. Each community colleges can make the award on their own. Lastly, and probably the most complicated portion of the bill, it would move the GA awarding process to the institution level and do so over the next 3 years. The goal is that each student who is eligible for a GA award receives a GA award. We've all heard stories of students not knowing who MHEC is, not knowing they're eligible for an award, or missing out on an award because of back and forth with the agency. Office of Program Analysis actually noted that one of the most searched on the search engines is MHEC. When they pull up MHEC, it pulls up, is MHEC a scam? So we want to cut through that red tape. Students are comfortable dealing with their institutions, financial aid office when applying to college, and I think there's a way for us to cut out the back and forth. My goal is the student can see a GA award in their letter from the institution and can accept that award from the institution and not have to deal with MHEC in this regard. I really believe this will lead to more students accepting these awards, which they're entitled to under current law. And now I do know, that being said, that I have no pride of authorship. I know that there has some back and forth and some current concerns about how we get there. Again, for my panelists, for others testifying today, what we want here is we want a good bill. We want a good bill that works for our students, that streamlines this process. So please, if you have ideas for amendments, ways that this bill can be improved, frankly, tell us, work with the subcommittee chair and the subcommittee vice chair, because what we want to do is we want to get it right. So with that, I'll turn it over to my panel. I see Mr. Power, you're in this middle there. Why don't you start off?
Thank you very much. Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, members of the Appropriations Committee, I'm Matt Power, the President of MICUA, here in support of House Bill 923. I'd like to thank the sponsors for their collaboration on this bill and their willingness to take our suggestions from the nonprofit sector. We commend them because we think the bill will result in more guaranteed access grants for more Marylanders, and we see the guaranteed access grant as the most life-changing grant that the state of Maryland does offer. The changes will increase access to the grant dramatically. We do have a few practical and logistical suggestions for the committee's consideration. You have our written testimony, so I won't get into the weeds on some of those. I'll just hit some of the highlights. We are concerned about the duplication of effort in the bill. In some instances, you could have a dozen schools that might be doing the same verification of one student. Currently, one institution's verification can be used by another to make an award, but the award is ultimately determined to have been made in error. The initial verifying institution is liable to reimburse the funds. So we would suggest that the institution that should reimburse the funds if it was made in error is the awarding institution that the student is attending. We'd also like to see in the bill explicit grandfathering for existing EA students to ensure their educational progression isn't negatively impacted or, in the worst case scenario, terminated. The bill directs the governor to include funding for financial aid offices at public institutions of higher education. Since the exact same burden is being placed on the financial aid offices at nonprofit institutions, as a matter of general fairness, we would appreciate the General Assembly's consideration for inclusion of our campuses in that language. Lastly, we appreciate the sponsor's acknowledgement that this transition will be a significant undertaking and would recommend the bill include a work group of all of the segments you see here, our financial aid officers and practitioners of financial aid practices that can dig into the weeds on the most effective way to make the Guaranteed Access Program a campus-based program. We greatly appreciate the collaboration and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Patrick Hogan with the University System of Maryland, here in support of House Bill 923 with amendments. I want to start by thanking you, Mr. Chair, and the Chair and Vice Chair of the ED Subcommittee, Delegate Smith and Solomon, for introducing this legislation. The USM and our institutions have long sought modifications and clarifications to the rules and regulations within MHEC for making need-based financial aid awards to students. We certainly appreciate the committee leadership working to improve the process. The legislation makes several changes that will allow institutions to better serve our students, to provide complete aid packages so they can make decisions about attending college sooner. There are some aspects of the bill, as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, that we would like to work with the committee on, and we believe need amendments to clarify the new method of awarding these grants. We believe MHEC should continue to oversee the GA and EA eligibility determination for the award process for the next generation students and students eligible for the Maryland State Financial Aid application. The effective date of the shift from MHEC to institutions in oversight should coincide with the full federal implementation of the FAFSA Simplification Act, which I believe is 2025. Campus financial aid systems will need to be modified to correctly identify and verify applicants, so the funding provided in the bill should be made available in FY25 prior to that verification requirement. And finally, the June 1st deadline for institutions to submit a list of GA award recipients does not allow adequate time for campuses to finalize their awards, and we would prefer a later date or some flexible time frame for that. Two of our campus financial aid directors are here and will be testifying shortly. They can provide additional detail for the committee and certainly answer any questions the committee has. With that, I will stop, and again, we look forward to working with the sponsors and working with the committee on amendments to pass this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you to the proposers of the changes to the promise bill.
Oops, sorry.
Okay, yes. Thank you. I'm Sandra Kurtenitis, the proud president of the Community College of Baltimore County, and this year the chair of the MAC President's Council. So thank you to the proposers, and also I see some of my delegates here. Always thanks to you. But I'm here to speak on behalf of the proposed changes of to the Promise Scholarship in ways that we believe are going to help many more Marylanders benefit from this really marvelous gift. I'll use my own college to illustrate the challenge that we hope to address. Last year, CCBC served 48,000 students, yet because of a March 1 deadline, MHEC processing delays, and restrictive application guidelines, we were able to award only 259 Promise scholarships. Thus, an invitation of a promise becomes a broken promise for many, and the result for the sector that serves 300,000 students a year was simply that only 3,200 scholarships could be awarded and millions of dollars sat on the table. We propose a simple fix with a long reach. First, allow community colleges to administer the Promise program. The feds trust us to do Pell. You can trust us with Promise. The second, make Promise scholarships available to all community college students, full-time, part-time, credit, non-credit. With an average age of 36 at CCBC, 89% of our students attend part-time. That means 43,000 of the 48,000 will never be able to apply for a Promise scholarship. A dream denied to many people. Third, remove the March 1 application deadline. Unlike high school seniors, most community college students are working adults and would be quite unaware of such an early deadline. And four, eliminate the FAFSA requirement for workforce credentials, finding another way to verify income. Our college has 136 very valuable workforce certifications, only 4 of which are Pell eligible. So I will say to you, Maryland's community colleges are coming out of the pandemic with vision and strength. That's what you would expect of us. And we are more determined than ever to lead with equity based on who is sitting in the classroom today. We know that education is a great leveler and a great lifter. Thank you for being willing to consider democratizing this wonderful Maryland college promise. I commend and support this legislation as an excellent example of Maryland leading with equity. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. I also want to thank the sponsors for this legislation. My name is Brad Phillips. I'm the Executive Director for the Maryland Association of Community Colleges, and I'm here on behalf of all 16 of my colleges in full support of the changes for the Promise Scholarship as proposed in this legislation. You know, student debt still remains the largest barrier for many students to go to college. And for community college students, they won't even take out debt to attend. The fact that the Promise Scholarship has yet to fully been able to utilize the full appropriation that it's received, we think by allowing these changes in this legislation, not only can we help expand the promise, but we can reach more of those needy students. You know, we get funding from three aspects of the state. We get operating dollars, which helps keep tuition low for everybody. We receive capital funding, and we receive financial aid that helps the most needy population of students attend our institutions. And I just have to say, one of the things that we like so much about this, that we would like to double down on it, is changing the way that which the state views need-based financial aid, specifically for community college students. By looking at the GA and EA, maybe expanding that funding towards the Promise Scholarship. The GA and the EA, the state's need-based program, about $100 million, out of which we do not really benefit as much because of the criteria established within awarding that program. We think we could better serve the population of community college students if we could roll all of the funding together, the best aspects of all the programs, and place them under one College Promise Scholarship where there's no competing deadlines, no if-then scenarios for students, no confusion about MHEC's role. We can help the students immediately where they are with the needs that they have, and we think we could really accomplish a whole lot more and help expand some of those critical workforce shortage areas by doing so. And with that, we just really appreciate the sponsors in introducing this legislation, and thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the House Appropriations Committee. For the record, my name is Connor Curran, and I had the privilege of serving as a student trustee on the Anne Arundel Community College Board of Trustees. I'm here today to urge this committee to support House Bill 923 to further support our community college students. This legislation has two parts that will directly help students. It will expand the eligibility of the Promise Scholarship to part-time students. At AACC, 77% of our students are part-time. This would give just over 3/4 of our students another opportunity to more state financial aid. We all know that Maryland's community colleges are creating not only the future of our great state, but the workforce of today. The more the state of Maryland is able to help our students, the more opportunity our state will provide for our young people. Governor Moore says to leave no one behind. House Bill 923 will allow our community colleges to further support our students. This legislation also decentralizes the scholarship. Our students already have so much on their plate. We should always be working to put as many resources in one spot for easier access for our students. We are currently renovating our Floristano building to do just that. Under this bill, the Promise Scholarship will be distributed through the individual institution's financial aid office. Students who are recipients of the scholarship have to go through their school and the Maryland Higher Education Commission to receive this aid, which can be confusing and demotivating. Students should not have to go through multiple agencies to get the financial help they need. The cost of higher education in the United States is at an all-time high, and our community colleges are bridging this gap with a low-cost, high-quality education. I ask you all for your support for House Bill 923, which will help our state's community colleges to eliminate those gaps. Thank you.
Are there any questions for the panel? All right. We look forward to working with each and every one of you to make sure we get these amendments right. So thanks for
Thank you very much.
input.
Thank you.
I believe that Amanda Felix, I'm sorry, my glasses. Amma Felix was on that panel, and we also have Dave Horn, Katie Maloney, and DeWitt Lima. Welcome. While you all make your way forward, let me also thank Delegate Solomon for his work the last 2 years on EED on this bill and helping to craft it and get it together, so, and co-sponsor. Thank you. Welcome to you all.
I can go first. Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, thank you so much for the opportunity to testify in front of you this afternoon. My name is David Lemma. I'm the Director of Student Financial Aid at University of Maryland College Park. Thank you again for the opportunity and for your hard work to make the financial aid process at our state a better experience for our students and our families. I'll tell you a little bit about the financial aid process and what we do in the office when we communicate financial aid to our eligible Maryland students. Students currently start submitting the free application for federal student aid starting on October 1st. Most freshman students who get admitted to the institution get their admissions decision starting in December and January, and get their financial aid offers from the financial aid offices from each college. Each college can depend on their process when they will notify students about their financial aid offer. And usually that will go out to eligible students in February or early March. Other colleges can start offering financial aid on rolling basis in October. Most freshman admitted students for next fall, for example, choose where to attend college by the national May 1st confirmation deadline, enrollment confirmation deadline. In most cases, early financial aid offers we sent from the financial aid office include financial aid programs from the federal institution and other programs, but exclude the need-based state financial aid programs. These financial aid programs are offered to students later in the year, usually mid-April or in early May. When the students get these financial aid notifications and when the families look at these financial aid offers, they're usually incomplete. They don't have the full financial aid opportunities provided to the students and families to make an informed college enrollment decisions by the May 1st deadline. So adding, and if given the opportunity, if the institutions are allowed to offer these need-based state programs as part of the initial and the early financial aid notification process, it will be a great assistance to families to make an informed decision in enrollment of colleges for the next year. Thank you for your consideration, and thank you.
Good afternoon to the committee. Good afternoon, Chair Barnes and Vice Chair Chang. I'd like to thank you for the invitation to speak here today about House Bill 923. My name is Ama Felix. I'm the President and CEO of Collegiate Directions, which is a nonprofit organization that focuses on college access and completion. That's for low-income first-generation to college students in Montgomery County. I'm also the secretary for the Maryland Alliance for College Affordability and Equity, and you'll be hearing from my colleague Joe Fisher in a minute. For today, I wanted to share with you the importance of conducting a comprehensive study of the Delegate Howard P. Rawlings Program of Educational Excellence Awards and supporting outreach services by community-based organizations. We're testifying in support of HB 923 with amendments. The point about the need for the comprehensive study, we are in favor of conducting a comprehensive analysis of the need-based financial aid programs before significant changes are made. We applaud the most recent report in December by OPEGA, DLS's OPEGA office, which highlighted many of the pain points that low-income Maryland students and families that we serve experience on their journey to access college, public education in the state, which include long wait lists, onerous processes, extended timelines. And we're happy that many of those things are addressed in the bill. Our families are also in desperate need for outreach services to help them navigate each step of the way, even if those things in the bill are enacted. Our Alliance has previously communicated with this committee about how the Excellence Awards are grossly and woefully underfunded. Both the EA and GA have wait lists, and for example, the EA, the buying power, has diminished over time and continues to diminish even as we sit here with inflation. The $3,000 limit that it is on now has been in place since 1996 and does not keep pace, obviously, with the cost of tuition. So we want to make sure that we improve the process so that those who want to go to college in our state are not trapped in a bureaucratic morass and miss the opportunity to achieve a college degree. And we think that a comprehensive study would help us better examine the EA and GA awards, which we hope to become one program, and possibly consider the possibility of making the awards based on a sliding scale. And those details would be worked through in this comprehensive study that we would talk about. The other thing is continued support and increased support for community outreach. It's the work that community-based organizations do to work directly with students and families who have to navigate this bureaucracy, which is very onerous. And the services include helping ensure that more Marylanders are completing a credential and that they then in turn become workers in the state and contribute to the tax base here. The supports come in the form of tutoring and test preparation, intensive one-on-one counseling that's culturally competent for the students and families that we serve, as well as being intentional about family engagement. And we think community-based providers that are providing this on a direct one-on-one basis, who are in the neighborhoods and are trusted sources by students and families, is critical. And a strong network of such organizations is important to help the students and families overcome the hurdles that they're facing. We are in favor of many of the provisions in the bill that streamline the process for these low-income students, and we believe that a more comprehensive study would dramatically improve the processes and remove duplicative administrative burdens that still plague needy families in order to meet the needs of underserved and support more students and families. We think outreach services are essential to ensure educational equity for all Marylanders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Katie Maloney. I'm here today on behalf of Towson University. I have nothing further to add other than I'm happy to take questions, and we look forward to working with you to fine-tune the legislation. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. If you don't mind,
Hi, I'm Dave Horn, Director of Financial Aid at Towson University. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Vice Chair, for this opportunity to speak about this bill and how we can remove barriers to these aid programs. Because many students and families have difficulties completing the aid process, it's very important that we make these processes as easy as possible. Just removing the GPA requirement alone will have a surprisingly large improvement in that process. That one task of MHEC having to collect GPA data from every high school in the state was a massive part of what delayed them in moving forward. The other major barrier to this process occurs when we make students and families submit additional data to confirm the accuracy of the data they've already reported on their federal aid application. These grant programs used to require every applicant to go through that process, but we've been reducing those burdens every year and must continue to do so. Going forward, we should limit those additional documentation requirements to students who've already been selected for those processes by the U.S. Department of Education, and should limit that process to what the Department of Education already requires every school to do. MHEC might need to request a few additional documents for a small group of additional applicants who meet unique criteria, but we have to keep those selections small. As we work together to develop a final bill, we must make it easier for MHEC and colleges to work together to get aid offers to students earlier. And from a funding standpoint, I just want to highlight, again, what you said, $3,000 EA grants since 1996. No increases.
to the panel. Right. Again, thank you all for being with us. Thanks for your work that you do for these students. We have, I think, as we've already mentioned, another live witness before we move to our virtual witnesses. We have a legend with us, Joe Fisher, also 21st District resident. Joe, you want to come on up? How many high schools are you in now, Joe?
7.
7?
Yeah.
Started going door to door in Laurel, right?
Door to door.
That's it. Well, welcome.
Yeah. One of them was State Senator Alonzo's.
Yep, one of the first doors you knocked on,
There you go.
Senator Washington. So who says you can't make a difference, right?
All right, really glad to be here. Chairman Barnes and the committee, as I have such great passion for the people. My name is Joe Fisher. I serve as the chair of Maryland Alliance for College Affordability and Equity, and I'm the CEO of First Generation College Bound, celebrating 32 years of leadership, being consistent in tracking the students that we've served since 1990. Along with me today is Janice Doyle, who is an advisor to the Alliance and others, to testify. And I want you to know she's played a major role in my passion, because she came to me 30-plus years ago and says, we've got this money, but the kids aren't applying for it. I said, don't worry, I'll take care of it. I will never forget that. We are pleased to provide testimony on the behalf of the Maryland Alliance of College Affordability and Equity. We are testifying in support of HB 923 with amendments. The Alliance believes that improvements in the state's financial aid programs, the Educational Assistance Grant, the Guaranteed Access Grant, Next Generation Scholars Program, and the Promise Scholarship are crucial and will make a significant impact in the future of thousands of Marylanders and the state economy. The Alliance members have significant experience. As you've heard, we've been on the ground floor working in the communities with students from low-income families, and we believe that this experience makes us valuable as we work to improve higher education, the higher education pipeline for low-income students today and generations to come. On a personal note, contributing to my passion growing up in poverty, I've always enjoyed helping others, even as a kid. My parents, with only a 6th grade and 10th grade education, raised my siblings and me, reinforcing empathy, discipline, integrity, and humility, which laid the foundation for our success. The goal was to finish high school, which we did. College was not expected for me and my siblings or me. Dr. Martin Luther King advocated for the passage and the signing of the Civil Rights Act when I was 11 years old. I had no idea of the impact it would have on my life. He truly got it right, as the Civil Rights Act removed barriers, freeing me, which I did not know, from Jim Crow in 1964, and enabling me to attend college, become a teacher, college coach, and founder of First Generation College Bound. Who would have known? Today, we celebrate 1,000 alumni achievements, including associate's degrees, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, doctorate, and even, as you heard before, a Maryland State Senator. I was fortunate to have not only a positive influence on my parents, but also the dream and legislative legacy of Dr. King. We are here today working to get it right. As Chairman Ben, you said earlier, to get it right, not for the moment, but for future generations. I sit here before you today as chair of the Alliance of Maryland College Affordability and Equity, advocating for you to leverage our knowledge and experience, removing the financial aid barriers for students to attend college and graduate, the many low-income students throughout the state of Maryland. Once again, the Alliance is in favor of House Bill 923 with amendments to get it right. At this time, I proudly recognize Janice Doyle, the advisor to the Alliance. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, I'm pleased to be here today to talk to you about the position of the Maryland Alliance for College Affordability on House Bill 923. As mentioned by Joe, we support improvements in state need-based financial aid. We've been working on these programs for years now, trying to make improvements, particularly for the low-income population that we serve. And it's challenging. If you look at the recent DLS report from the Office of Program Evaluation and Government Accountability, it found many, many, many problems that are barriers for our students to get this aid. And if you look at the numbers compared to how many students actually get it, to who could be able to get it, the numbers are extremely small. And so when we look at what the state is faced with, increasing the amount of educated students who have post-secondary education, degrees in the state and the importance of that, we think this is something that needs to be addressed. And we think this study is a really good time to do that. The one thing that we have concerns about is the financial aid system that we have in the United States of Maryland, which includes federal, state, institutional, and private. It's that, my description of it is it's a house of cards. It's a complex structure, it's all intertwined, and you just take one card out and the thing falls apart. And that's what we're dealing with, because there are multiple players in this process, and students and their families are in the middle, and the institutions are in the middle as well. So what we would like to see is a way, a group to be established to study how these programs really would work best, and it needs to have all the important constituencies at the table, which are the policymakers, which are the financial aid officers, which are nonprofit organizations like myself and others. That is really the best way to go about, how we should really fix these programs. The Alliance ourselves, we believe that it would be better to take the EA and GA and merge them together and create one program with a sliding scale of awards. Then you don't have issues of, students falling off the cliff and all these other things. This could be campus-based or it could be centralized. Those things can be worked out. But we think that putting these two programs together would solve many of the problems in the program. And we also support streamlining these programs as much as possible. Many of those things are being done in this bill today, which is why we support it, because it really does streamline some of the qualifications that are necessary. We do recommend several amendments, and we talk about some areas of concern. Those are in our written testimony, so I'm not going to go over there today, but I'm just happy to be here today, to support this effort, and we're ready and willing to do any kind of study or other support that's necessary. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
I don't see any. Thanks for all your work all these years.
Thank you.
Appreciate you both.
Thank you.
Have a good day. We have a number of virtual witnesses. Yep. Okay. Welcome to you all. Let's start with Kelly. Welcome, Kelly. You have 2 minutes. You're on.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, yes we can. Welcome.
Give me 1 second, please. Sorry, I'm trying to pull out my thing. Okay, I'm ready. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelly Atterbaugh. I'm a graduating senior, and I currently attend Bowie State University. Today, I'm talking about challenges I've had with keeping my GA grant and how First Generation College Bound has helped and worked with me to obtain and keep this grant. During my senior year of high school, I had no idea which college I wanted to go to or how I was going to pay for school. But in the first quarter of my senior year, I was introduced to Ms. Deja from First Generation College Brown, who helped me all throughout high school until I got to college. During this process, I faced a lot of challenges, which included understanding the GA grant, turning in paperwork, and doing appeals, which was a very exhausting process. But with the help of FGCB, they gave me the motivation to keep going. I faced another challenge during my junior year of college after taking a semester off. This almost caused me to lose the GA grant, but thanks to FGCB, they were able to help and guide me on getting the GA grant back. Having the Guarantee Access Grant has helped me tremendously because I am able to graduate this May with no debt, which makes medical school more attainable for me as I continue to pursue my dream. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Excellent testimony. Are there any questions? I don't see any. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank
Appreciate you. Do we have other virtual witnesses? I thought I saw someone else pop up. Okay. Mary, welcome. You have 2 minutes. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary, and I just want to say thank you for having me here. And to start, I just want to say I have always known I would go to college. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I didn't know the first steps I needed to take, and there's only so much you can ask Google. Since my parents have never been through this type of transition before, from high school in the United States to college, they didn't know what it was like to not know the path to take. They couldn't guide me choosing a major. They couldn't comfort me the way I needed. And most importantly, as a first generation student, they couldn't provide the financial aid we as a family would need to get me a higher education. I remember when I got my graduation cap and gown in the summer of 2022, how I needed to look up on YouTube how to attach a tassel to a cap. As I was doing this, I felt an overpowering feeling of pride, and it was all because I didn't do it alone. My first generation counselor was Miss Onokoko. We call her Miss O. She was there for me more than I could ever say about my high school counselor. At every step, she was there. First generation college bond was there to remind me to do my FOSFA before my school could. They helped me filling it out. Miss O would stay on the call with me for hours when necessary, helping me calculate a tax return I've never seen or touched because I never took a financial literacy tax class. And my parents didn't know how to use FOSFA, especially since I was the firstborn, so it was like a new concept to them. Miss Ho helped me decide the types of schools that I should be applying to. Miss Ho told me that I didn't need to have my major figured out right at that moment, saving me from crumbling under the stress of not knowing and feeling like I was behind. Ms. Ho motivated me with her own stories of the college application and decision process, how difficult it was, and how she didn't understand why certain colleges didn't accept her when she was a good student. She informed me about MD caps and then district senate scholarships. Without her help, without first generation college bound's help and representation in my life, I would just become another statistic, stuck taking out a loan that would cripple me and hold my family back before I could help them or help myself. They showed me where to go, and one of those places was towards the GA grant. The GA grant is the most important, impactful, and life-saving gift that the state of Maryland could ever provide to a person that is just wanting to be and do better with their life. I would constantly fear that my need for tuition and housing at my college would drive my family apart because I wasn't the only child we had, and we had family back in Nigeria looking up to us and expecting us to help provide financially as well. They wanted to act strong.
Mary, thank you so much for your testimony here today. We're really proud of all you've accomplished. What year are you?
Oh, I'm a freshman right now.
Great. Well, congratulations to you. I'm glad that you shared your story with us, and good luck for the next 4 years.
You too. Thank you.
Rachel's with us. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I wish I could be there in person, and those are two hard witnesses to follow, actually. Thank you, Chairman Barnes and Vice Chairman Chang, Delegate Solomon, and members of the committee for this opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 923. My name is Rachel Lastumbo, and I'm College Success Director at College Tracks, a nonprofit in Montgomery County. We work with first-generation to college students and students from low-income and immigrant households by helping them get to and through college. In our Access program, we are currently working with over 1,300 high school students from 5 MCPS high schools, helping them with college admissions and financial aid advising. In the Success program, we are working with over 520 college students who have gone through our Access program, 96% of whom attend colleges in Maryland. We help these students enroll, persist, and graduate from college and move into a meaningful career. We are also members of the Alliance, represented by Joe Fisher, Janice Doyle, Alma Felix, and others here today, and we greatly appreciate their leadership and suggestions. We are grateful for the opportunity to collaborate with the committee to simplify the process of getting Maryland state aid to the many students who need it in order to pursue their education. The process of getting and maintaining state aid in Maryland is unduly complicated, and we know from experience that many deserving students do not get the aid they need to pursue their education. We support specific provisions in this bill, including eliminating certain requirements for the Guaranteed Access Grant, including GPA, enrollment timeframes, and age. For example, students will be admitted to their first choice college in Maryland, but because of their GPA, they are unable to attend because they don't receive the Guaranteed Access Grant. We also support changes to the College Promise Scholarship, specifically allowing for the scholarship to be awarded to part-time students. Since many of our students have to work, they must attend school part-time, but they are still in need of state aid. Removing these barriers to the Guaranteed Access Grant and the College Promise Scholarship are positive developments. We look forward to working with members of the committee to bring further improvements to the system to ensure that those who have the most financial need in Maryland are given the assistance they need to pursue higher education,
Thank you.
get on a career pathway.
Thank you so
and
much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we appreciate you. Thanks. We look forward to any suggestions you have on improvements, and we're welcoming those. Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Okay. I think, do we have any other virtual witnesses? I think that concludes the bill hearing on 923. We'll turn to House Bill 623. Delegate Crosby.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the Appropriations Committee. For the record, Delegate Brian Crosby here to present House Bill 623, St. Mary's County Public Facilities Bond. Full disclosure, this is my first time in front of a probes in 5 years, so it's pretty good to be here. I have submitted this bill, frankly, on request of the county commissioners of St. Mary's County. They originally put forward this bond request. The bill authorizes the county commissioners to issue up to $56 million in bonds to finance acquisition, construction of, and improvements to public facilities and public works in the county. And thank you for your consideration, and respectfully request a favorable report.
Thank you very much, Delegate Crosby, for presenting the bill. Are there any questions for the bill sponsor? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 623. Next, the committee will now move on to House Bill 804, Delegate Forbes, State Retirement and Pension Systems, Amortization of Unfunded Liabilities and Surpluses.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm joined today with the Executive Director of the Pension System, Martin Noven, and I'm not going to bury the lead. This is his favorite pension bill of the session. For the record, I'm Delegate Kathy Forbes. I'm grateful for the opportunity to give testimony in support of HB 804, a pension bill that will revise our amortization schedule. This bill will protect the system and the plan sponsors from future volatility in employer contributions. Currently, we're on a 25-year straight amortization schedule that began in 2013. We have 15 years left in that schedule, and our actuaries recommended revisions to allow us flexibility in our scheduling. This policy before you is representative of work over the 2022 interim by the agency's actuary, the Joint Committee on Pensions, its staff, and its actuary. I ask for a favorable report on this bill as it will ensure less volatility in our employer contribution rates and in turn provide for a more sustainable pension plan. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions, or I've brought a friend.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate Forbes. We support House Bill 804. It would strengthen the pension system by controlling contribution volatility, which is exceedingly important, and it would do so by smoothing any future liabilities as we remain on track to being fully funded by 2039. So we urge a favorable report.
This committee for the bill sponsor or Mr. Noven. Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 804. The committee will now move on to House Bill 527. Delegate Forbes, Correctional Officers Retirement Systems Transfer of Membership Modification. Delegate Forbes.
Thank you, Chair Chang, members of the committee. Again, I'm Delegate Kathy Forbes, and I'm pleased for the opportunity to offer testimony in support of HB 527. This is a technical bill, again, a pensions bill. There are two parts to this bill. It preserves the sick leave of members who were moved into the correctional officer system under Chapter 147 of the Acts of the General Assembly in 2022, and it automatically transfers the employees' system service for participants moved into the correctional officers' retirement system via legislation passed in 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2022, unless the effective members opt out and notify the state retirement before June 1st, 2024. These technical changes will benefit the retirees of the correctional officers retirement system, and I ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Also joining us today is Ms. Ann Galtha with the State Retirement Pension System. Ms. Galtha, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Just here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of the committee for the bill sponsor, Ms. Galtha? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 527. The committee will now move on to House Bill 673. Delegate Edelson, Maryland Transit Administration Fare Price Requirements Alterations, jointly assigned to Appropriations and also Environment and Transportation. And we got it. All right. Delegate Edelson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of this esteemed committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Mark Edelson, here to present HB 673, the Fair Fares Act. The purpose of this bill is to remove mandated fare increases and allow the Maryland Transit Administration, MTA, to set fares in line with equity and ridership goals. Under the current law, which was passed in 2013, MTA fares are inextricably linked to the Consumer Price Index and are therefore required to increase by a minimum of 10 cents this summer. The impact on working families around the state will be staggering. A recent report on ridership information reflects that 83% of MTA bus riders are African American and 92% earn less than $50,000 per year. In fact, 50% of MTA's core bus riders earn less than $25,000 per year, and less than 20% have access to a vehicle. As currently written, the increase would result in a modest impact on MTA's budget, but would place a crushing burden on the backs of low and fixed income working families that need transit the most. It will also result in fare disputes, placing our already overworked drivers and operators on the front lines of having to enforce the fare increases, which will undoubtedly slow down routes and negatively impact reliability. On the contrary, the Fair Fares Act would remove the requirement that MTA increase fares on our most vulnerable residents, and instead, the authority would be permitted to set fares that are more consistent with our shared goals of increasing ridership, enhancing our region's economic competitiveness, and promoting inclusive growth for all Marylanders. In addition, it will also protect the public trust by requiring notice and a public hearing prior to any rate changes. In support of this bill, I would note that you have written testimony in your files from MDOT, the Maryland State and DC AFL-CIO, the Transit Caucus, and a myriad of other stakeholders. With that, I strongly urge a favorable report on this bill, and will turn it over to MTA Administrator Holly Arnold and the rest of my panel.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Holly Arnold, Administrator of the Maryland Transit Administration, and I'm here in favor of House Bill 673. I'd first like to thank Delegate Edelson for sponsoring this bill. As Administrator of MTA and a daily rider of our service, we're fully committed to delivering a safe, reliable, and frequent, easy-to-use transit system. I'm also a believer that equity must be at the center of everything that we do. Under current law, MTA is required to increase our base fare for our core modes every 2 years and for our commuter services every 5 years based on the Consumer Price Index. The current cost for a one-day pass on our core modes, which is like bus, light rail, and metro, is $2. And according to the law, we are required to increase the fare in June of this year. The bill before you would put the power to adjust fares back in the hands of MTA and require that public input be considered before any increase. Now, maybe $2 doesn't sound like a lot, but for many of our riders, the cost to ride MTA is something that must be budgeted for, and an increase has a huge impact on their budget as they use MTA service for all of their trips. Our most recent customer survey found that over 50% of our core bus riders earn less than $25,000 a year, and under 20% of our riders have access to a private vehicle. These riders rely on MTA service to access work, school, medical appointments. We are a critical service for them. And this bill would allow us to make more equitable fare pricing decisions with direct input from the public. I also want to be clear that given our funding structure, the cost of fares has not impacted any decision on the amount of service that we provide, and we would not make any service scheduling decisions based on the fare revenue. But putting this power to change fares back in the hands of MTA and requiring it be put before the public before any implementation would ensure that we can continue to keep transit accessible to as many people as possible. So I want to thank the committee for the opportunity to speak, and I urge a favorable report on House Bill 673. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Bakari Height. I am a transit equity organizer with the Transform Maryland Transportation Coalition, and I'm also a year resident of the state of Maryland. House Bill 673 affects not only myself, avid rider of AIM.MTA, but also many members of my neighborhood, many of which are made up of very many zero-car households, but also the kids of the Baltimore City Public Schools. I mention the kids as they are now the generation that are choosing to forego having driver's licenses and in search of walkable neighborhoods connected by frequent, fast, and affordable public transit. However, many of these neighborhoods are out of price range for them, and I'd like for them to grow up and want to pay into a system that respects them and not leave for a city or a tax base that does. Currently, since I've been here, the fares have risen within a year of my arrival and has been complemented by declining service. And I would also hate for riders to experience another rise again and not getting their fares worth. As of now, our current system has not included equity as a cornerstone of movement throughout the region. For example, it takes me almost 2 hours to get from my house, which is near one of the largest employers in Baltimore region, Johns Hopkins Hospital, to BWI Thurgood Marshall International Airport on local buses and light rail, while MARC passengers enjoy a comfortable 30-minute ride from Baltimore Penn Station into the BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport Station in under an hour via separate and more expensive fare. Equity has to be considered in establishing fair fares if we want Marylanders to thrive in a fully thriving public transit system. We cannot expect those who cannot afford a $2 fare to step onto a bus to pay more for a system that does less. If we can protect those fares for those who cannot afford, we can work towards building the frequent, fast, and affordable public transit system we deserve. I ask the committee for a favorable report of this bill, and thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is John Hilligus. I am the Director of Regional Mobility and Infrastructure for the Greater Washington Partnership. The partnership is a nonprofit alliance of influential business leaders and employers from Maryland, Virginia, and Washington, D.C. And together we try to identify some of the most pressing challenges and offer solutions to the region's most critical issues. Our goal at the partnership is to champion economic growth and inclusive prosperity from Baltimore to Richmond to make this region the best place to live, work, and build a business. House Bill 673, or the Fair Fares Act, would give the Maryland Transit Administration the freedom and flexibility to set transit fares in line with ridership goals. As other jurisdictions around the region explore free and low-cost fares, Maryland is currently at a competitive disadvantage as the existing inflexibility reduces the state's ability to advance transportation equity and harms the region's inclusive economic growth. The Greater Washington Partnership is a proud member of the Baltimore Transit Future Coalition, a collective effort to ensure we are advancing the projects and policies that will create a world-class transportation system for the Greater Baltimore region and to create shared economic prosperity. The coalition is supported by more than 65 businesses, nonprofits, and anchor institutions, as well as labor unions in Greater Baltimore who are ready to support efforts to enhance and expand the utility of the region's transit system. You will find a letter from the Baltimore's Transit Future campaign in your hearing materials, including signatories like Johns Hopkins, PNC Bank, as well as leaders like the Howard County Chamber of Commerce and the Baltimore County Chamber of Commerce. We ask the committee for a favorable report and to continue to prioritize improvements to the region's transit system. Thank you for the opportunity to comment today.
Very much, Delegate Edelson, for presenting the bill, and MTA Administrator Holly Arm for being here, also Mr. Hilligas and Mr. Height. Also, is there a K. Alexander Wallace here? You'd like to come up and provide your testimony, and then we'll take questions from members of the committee. 2 minutes, please.
Oh, no problem. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the Appropriations Committee. K. Alexander Wallace here on behalf of the Baltimore College Town Network, which is a coalition of the vast majority of higher education institutions within the Baltimore metropolitan area, including community colleges and small private colleges, half of our state's historically black universities, and many of our world-renowned research institutions and professional schools. It is widely understood that the Baltimore's metropolitan area's transit system does not meet the needs of students, residents, visitors, and most importantly to our coalition, all of our stakeholders at our universities and colleges. The Baltimore College Town Network includes nearly 120,000 students, and every 3 years, we survey those students and ask them a series of questions, including, how likely are you to stay in Baltimore after you graduate? And only 36% of those students respond with definitely likely, which is a lack of a return of our investment as a state. As students also report, quote, that a better public transportation system is a top item missing from Baltimore. Transportation is a key factor in whether a college student finds a city or region to be livable, affordable, and accessible. And to combat this, several of our member institutions created the Baltimore College Town Shuttle as a stopgap measure for affordability for our university stakeholders. With these services being vastly important, we do not provide a solution as a College Town Network that could reach the needs of many of our stakeholders as the Maryland Transit Administration. And so while with the passing of this legislation, we can make progress towards the affordability of public transportation for our students, our faculty, and our staff. Thank you so much, Mr. Vice Chair.
Wallace, for your testimony. And the first question we have is the Chairman of the Transportation Environments Subcommittee, Chairman Corman.
Mr. Chairman, either for the sponsor or the administrator, do you know in the before times, pre-pandemic, approximately what the daily ridership was system-wide for MTA?
We were about just over 300,000 riders per day pre-pandemic.
Great. And as I always like to remind you, there's actually a system that serves Marylanders, actually even more Marylanders for public transit, WMATA in my neck of the woods. Do you know if WMATA has a mandatory inflation adjustment on their fares that they have to do every couple of years?
They do not. They determine their own fares.
So this would make the Baltimore region on par with the Maryland suburban region if we pass this bill?
Correct. And it was one thing to note, if you want to talk about WMATA, their core bus fare is $2. And so if we do an increase, we're probably looking at about $2.20 for MTA fares compared to $2 in WMATA.
And I do always want to talk about WMATA. Thank you, Madam Administrator. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Also joining us today, we have members of the Environment and Transportation Committee joining us. Delegates Guyton, Delegate Morgan, Delegate Addison, thank you so much for being here. And we have a question from Delegate Guyton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much for this bill. It sounds like a wonderful idea. I certainly also agree that we need to increase ridership and make this more accessible to more people. My question as a representative purely of the Environment Transportation Committee today is that I do notice in the fiscal note that the Transportation Trust Fund takes a pretty big hit when this passes, or it might. So I wondered if, and this may be directed to MTA, I wondered if there had been conversations about plans to mitigate that deficit for the Transportation Trust Fund.
So I'll note that that assumes that there is no airfare increases ever again, and that's not what this bill is saying. It's giving the power to MTA to have that discussion and have the discussion with our riders locally. There are ongoing conversations on the TTF and how to continue funding that, and so this will continue to be part of that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Next, we have a question from Delegate Grice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would presume that since you're here to testify in favor of this bill, that you don't want to see any increases in these fares over time. So I think that assumption by DLS is probably fairly accurate. And it looks like the money would come out of the Transportation Trust Fund, and I can assure you, for motorists all over the state, when we call it a trust fund, I think every year it seems like motorists are less trusting this fund than we ever have. And the lion's share of the money that goes into this so-called trust fund comes from motorists. And unfortunately, we don't have any bills every year that's going to lower the cost of somebody's car payment or is going to lower the cost of the titling fees. And we actually are trying our very best to increase the gas tax through the index. So based on everything that I just said, since we're transferring, basically shifting money from motorists into mass transit, and in many parts of the state, a lot of these motorists will never use public transit. How can we call this bill fair?
So, I can't speak to the overall gas tax and the titling fees and whatnot. I can speak to our riders, and I know that for our riders, right now, $2 is a lot for many of them. Over 50% of our riders make less than $25,000 a year and do not have access to a car. So they need to be able to go to their doctor's appointment, to go to their work, to go everywhere that they're going. And this fare allows us to continue to have that discussion and have that discussion with our riders to understand what the right amount is for the fares.
Okay, so as a follow-up, a $2 ticket to ride on a train. So what about, there are poor people all over the state. So what about the poor people in the rural areas that don't have access to public transit? The only ride that they have, either they'll borrow a ride or they actually have to pay for a car. They have to pay for all these other sorts of things. So why are we treating poor people in the urban areas differently than we'll treat the poor people in the rural areas? In fact, we're going to take the money from the people in the rural areas and give it to, because if you look at it per person, per capita, those folks in rural areas are paying more for their transit than people in the urban areas.
One of the arguments I'd make there is that the reason poor folks in rural areas are not using transit is because we don't have transit connections that go to those areas. And so the idea here is to fundamentally change how we think about what our priorities are in the state. Is it single occupant vehicles, or is it a transit system that assists all Marylanders? And so the idea here is to start the process of changing that culture, focusing on how do we do more for our transit riders, increase ridership, and expand a system that will ideally get to all those folks. And I would just argue that there are a lot of programs in place right now focused on expanding transit access to a lot of parts of the state that don't currently have it. And so that, I think, is where we want to shift the conversation to and away from how do we focus all of our time, energy, and resources on single occupant vehicle drivers.
Well, the fact of the matter, the delegate, is that we still, in the rural parts of the state, in order to get from point A to point B, have to drive in a car. And if we take more money out of the Transportation Trust Fund, that's less money that's going to go to resurfacing, and that's more maintenance costs that folks are, every time somebody drives in a pothole in a rural area, that their suspension gets destroyed, you know? And so, I mean, we're not even talking about that either. We have to maintain our roads and bridges, and it's unfortunate that this is not, and this isn't directed at you personally, but every single year we have bills that are coming in that have huge fiscal notes that are going to take money out of the Transportation Trust Fund and move that money into mass transit, leaving those roads and bridges and those folks who have to drive on those roads and bridges in a situation where like I said, their maintenance costs are go up, and there's no effort at all in state government that's going to help those motorists in those rural areas who don't have mass transit and their cost of transportation. It seems like we're ignoring these folks in order to be able to say, hey, you know what, $2 for a train ticket is way too much. You know, I just don't. It's hard for me to be able to wrap that around and to comprehend that. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The Chair of the Transportation Environment Subcommittee, Chairman Corman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the administrator, what are the top jurisdictions that MTA serves? I know you serve statewide, particularly through the LOTS program, which sends money, I think, to every county. But what are the sort of the top jurisdictions?
We primarily serve Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Anne Arundel, and Howard County.
Okay, so would it surprise you to know that Baltimore City provides 5.5% of the Transportation Trust Fund allocated revenue, the extent it could be allocated by county? Anne Arundel, 10.7, Baltimore County, 12.7, Howard County, 5.1. Does that sound approximately right to you?
I will trust your numbers.
Okay, and that Caroline County provides 1% of the allocated Transportation Trust Fund revenue? Okay. Cecil County provides 2.1% of the allocated Transportation Trust Fund revenue? Okay, so you serve the counties that provide larger shares with your core service, larger shares of the Transportation Trust Fund revenue than some of these other counties?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Recognize Delegate Mangione.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And for the MTA, I guess my question would be, and maybe you don't have the numbers in front of you, but how much, because you're trying to lower the fares is obviously the goal of the bill, how much money come in through fares opposed to how much it costs to run a yearly, the yearly cost of running the MTA?
So I can tell you in FY22, we brought in about $22 million in, I'm sorry, $34 million in fares, and our budget was just over $900 million.
So I'm sorry, you said you brought in?
Approximately $34 million in fares. Our fare revenue has declined considerably through the pandemic as our ridership has dropped. Pre-pandemic, our fare revenue annually was about $100 million per year. So it's approximately 10% that we're bringing in through fare revenue.
Okay, so most of, obviously, the cost is subsidized, and the fares, it'd be fair to say that the fares only cover a very small portion of the service.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you for answering that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, and we're all kind of subject to our own little environment, and I notice in my county, the county that goes around, the big buses, they usually are empty. And I don't know, I guess what I'm kind of curious is if the city, let's say Baltimore City, we'll just use that as an example, if the ridership, the buses are always full, or are they empty a lot of the time? Because it seems to me that a smaller vehicle would be, that would use the same bus route, one would be probably environmentally better and also probably more cost-effective and not as expensive, to maintenance and all that good stuff. And maybe if it was cheaper using smaller vehicles, you could maybe also have maybe a better, I guess, in other words, you could maybe be able to have these go by in several different times so that it could accommodate people's different schedules. Just a thought. Can you address that?
Sure. So actually, the majority of the cost for a transit vehicle is the cost of the operator, so the cost of running it. So it honestly doesn't matter that much whether it's a bigger vehicle or a smaller one. There's some minor maintenance savings and the upfront cost. That said, we're about 70% of our pre-pandemic ridership on bus, and I can tell you that, at certain times of the day, we talk a lot about school students. When they're getting out of school, those buses are very full, overfilled in some cases. And so when you see the empty buses, you may see it at the end of the route, right, or the beginning of the route where folks aren't getting on as much. And so they start out empty, they fill up, they kind of empty out, and then empty out again towards the end. But we are seeing pretty heavy ridership. We're actually looking at bigger buses for a lot of areas, even more so than the smaller ones.
Subsidy from the city of Baltimore or the other jurisdictions that you have the system for paying for getting the students to and from school? Since it doesn't sound like you have school buses like some of the other counties.
Correct. There was legislation a few years ago that required MTA to provide that service for free.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Delegate Edelson, thank you for bringing this bill. As the co-chair of the Transit Caucus, I was really glad to see that we selected this as an endorsement. Just a quick question for you. Was there any significant unfavorable testimony submitted?
I'm not aware of any unfavorable testimony.
I was going to say I didn't see any either. And then to Mr. Hilligas, thank you for being here. I know you mentioned there were some companies that signed on to the letter, and I know the Greater Washington Partnership works with some of the leading economic drivers and economic companies across the region. Can you just highlight a couple of those again for us?
Yeah, so we are working as part of the Baltimore's Transit Future Coalition, which is a joint partnership with the Greater Baltimore Committee, and we've been working since June to kind of rally the business community around the need for better transit. So Johns Hopkins University and Health System, PNC Bank, Blue Cross, Care First, Blue Cross Blue Shield, as well as some of the other business groups like the Baltimore City Chamber of Commerce, the Howard County Chamber of Commerce, and more.
Great, thank you. And then one last question for the administrator. Just to be clear, the way I read this bill is what it does is it puts the control back in the hands of your agency and MDOT writ large, similar to what I think many of our colleagues were talking about with the gas tax, correct?
Correct.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just two quick follow-up questions. So in counties like Baltimore County or Baltimore City or Howard County or, I don't know, maybe even Montgomery County, isn't it a reasonable expectation that the motorists in those counties also would expect that their gas tax and their titling tax would also pave the roads and build bridges in those counties as well?
Yes, I mean, the Transportation Trust Fund is used for that these days. I will note that the more people get on transit, the more folks you have off the roads, the less congestion, the more opportunities you have for better roads and bridges.
No, I understand that, but that being left aside, we still have the responsibility to pave roads. And then my final question is, in regards to the Transportation Trust Fund, isn't the highway user revenue, isn't that sourced through the Transportation Trust Fund as well? And isn't that that's the source of funding that many of our counties and our municipalities fund their local roads as well? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
To the administrator, if I heard that correctly, MTA is operating at a loss.
That's correct.
Okay. And the other question out of our committee, we hear a lot about, you had mentioned bigger buses. And we hear a lot about electric buses and the cost for the electric buses and the charging stations. How do you plan to address that in the future?
So we are currently moving towards zero-emission buses as required by legislation from 2021. Those buses do cost more than regular buses, and so we're continuing to look for federal funding for that. As part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, there was a huge increase in the amount of federal formula dollars and federal discretionary dollars available towards particularly zero-emission buses. We've been very aggressive towards going after those, and we will continue to do so to help fund those.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you all. Thanks for the bill, Delegate.
Thank you.
We'll turn to House Bill 514, Delegate Solomon. Delegate, if you have a panel, you can bring them up. Just tell us who they are, please.
Aisha Holmes, Laurie Mitchell, Michael Wilson, and Julia Gross. Thank you.
They signed up, but are they in person? You want to grab them?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to present House Bill 514, which will expand the Maryland Meals for Achievement program. Just for the record, I'm Delegate Jared Solomon. As a former educator and somebody who's spent a lot of time working with Manna Foods, which is our local food agency in Montgomery County, I am acutely aware, and I think many of you are, the hunger crisis that we're facing in this country. And we know that with the expiration of the public health emergency that's coming later this spring, for many of our residents, that crisis is only going to get worse. We've heard a lot about the SNAP cliff, where benefits are going to dramatically decline. We know the rising food costs have only exacerbated that as well. And for far too many of our young people, folks who, many of our educators work with day in and day out, they're coming to school without breakfast. And for anybody who's ever worked in a school or worked with kids knows it's really hard to teach a hungry child. And so we've had a program in Maryland for almost 25 years that has been incredibly effective. It's called the Maryland Meals for Achievement Program. And it's really actually quite simple. What it says is if you are a school that has 40% more of students who qualify for free and reduced meals, you can serve every student in your school a free breakfast after the bell rings. So instead of it becoming something that has to happen before school, so as students got to get there earlier and really make a concerted effort to get the food, we know a lot of our students are dealing with transportation issues, and we often know a lot of kids don't get up early enough to eat properly. And that 40% threshold is really important because we know a lot of families don't necessarily fill out the forms. So just because you hit that 40% threshold, the likelihood is you've got a lot more students in your building who would really benefit from support for breakfast. And again, it's been incredibly effective. We have about 615 schools that participate in what's called breakfast after the bell. And that again is literally in every corner of the state. So whether it's Baltimore, Carroll County, the Eastern Shore, Western Maryland, we've got schools and students that are getting a healthy breakfast to start the day and being able to succeed when they go into the classroom because of this program. Since 2018, the program's been funded at about $7.5 million annually. So this bill actually, I know we hear this all the time, this bill is actually really simple. What the bill does is it increases the appropriation to $12 million annually because that's what we believe is the gap to make sure that every school, again, in every corner of the state that is currently on the wait list would be able to implement the breakfast after the bell program. According to data that we got back from DLS, that is approximately 260, give or take, schools that currently would qualify for Maryland Meals for Achievement for this breakfast after the bell if we were able to fully fund it. I know budgets are really tight, obviously, but I think what else is really critically important to understand about this investment is it really does leverage quite a bit of federal money. So estimates are for about the extra $4.5 million that I mentioned, we'll receive about $10 million back in federal funds. So that means for every $1 of state dollars that we put in, our schools are going to get $2.25 back from the federal government, which again is really critical to make sure that we are meeting the needs of all of our students. So with that, I'm really happy to have a panel here of not only nutrition and hunger experts, but some students as well, and would urge a favorable report.
Good afternoon, Chairman Barnes. My name is Aisha Holmes. I am the director of Maryland No Kid Hungry. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today and speak with you and the committee. I'm here today, as Delegate Sullivan kindly said, in support of House Bill 0514, Maryland Meals for Achievement, which is proposing an additional investment of $4.5 million to schools that are at least 40% or more serving children who qualify for free reduced meals. The Maryland Food Bank recently put out a report, and it said that roughly 50% of families making less than $35,000 a year are food insecure. When considering all income levels, almost 19% of families are facing food insecurity. This data tells us that children in Maryland are at risk for facing hunger this year. Childhood hunger is a solvable problem, and investing in Maryland Meals for Achievement can play a critical role in reducing food insecurity for our children at greatest risk. The policies outlined in House Bill 0514 is proven and effective. MMFA is an important tool with a 24-year track record to maximize participation in school breakfast. Nearly 64% of students in MMFA schools participate in the school breakfast program as compared to 31% of students in non-participating schools. And research tells us that students who eat breakfast after the bell demonstrate better educational performance, improved health outcomes, and a decrease in disciplinary needs. In closing, No Kid Hungry Maryland encourages this committee to favorably report on this bill. Thank you for your consideration.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Julia Gross, and I'm here on behalf of Maryland Hunger Solutions in support of this bill. For all of the reasons already mentioned, Oh, no. So my name is Julia Gross. I'm here on behalf of Maryland Hunger Solutions in support of this bill. For all of the reasons already mentioned, we know that school breakfast has proven benefits to students' health, educational outcomes, and development. But unfortunately, we also know that too many students miss out on this opportunity to get a healthy meal at the start of their day because of the barriers associated with breakfast. Three of the major ones being cost, timing, and stigma, all three of which Maryland Meals for Achievement is uniquely designed to overcome by covering the cost of the meal for all students in participating schools and then bringing the breakfast into the school day where students are actually able to participate. So one of the biggest challenges in traditional breakfast models is that it's often served in the cafeteria before the start of the school day. And I can tell you from personal experience growing up in a rural district and relying on school bus systems and carpooling groups, a lot of students aren't able to get to school before the start of the school day in time to sit down at the cafeteria and eat a full meal. And there are many families juggling work schedules who have the exact same problem with transportation and getting there on time. On top of that, serving breakfast in a place that is separate from where students actually are in the morning only increases the stigma around the program and serves to increase the false narrative that school breakfast isn't for everyone, which could not be farther from the truth. That's why fully funding Maryland Meals for Achievement is so important. Giving schools the opportunity to opt into this program specifically funds breakfast models that break through all of these barriers by serving breakfast in the classroom where all students are, giving options for grab-and-go models at kiosks, at entry points or other areas in the school, or serving second chance breakfast a little bit after the start of the school day when a lot of kids are actually hungry. All of these have long been considered best practices in ensuring equitable access to the most important meal of the day and ensuring all students are fueled up and ready to learn. For all of those reasons, we are supportive of HB 514 in ensuring this long-standing, well-loved, and successful program is finally fully funded and available to all eligible schools. So thank you for your consideration, and we urge a favorable report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Michael J. Wilson. I'm here today representing the Maryland System Food Resiliency Council. The council was created by the legislature to look at the systems around food in the state of Maryland and to help build resilience. I have submitted a statement for the record. I am not going to read it. I'm not going to repeat everything that everyone has already said. I think we always know that Maryland Meals for Achievement is a gold standard Maryland program and should be fully funded. From the perspective of the Food System Resilience Council, you know, school meals are a part of a broader system of food in our state. And there are many different things that are going on. And as Delegate Solomon talked about, you know, today is an important day. Today is the last day of February, and starting next month, starting tomorrow, there will be cuts in the SNAP program across the country. The cut in Maryland will mean about $1 billion less over the course of the next year. It's going to hit every one of the households, SNAP households in the state of Maryland. Hundreds of thousands of households, more than 600,000 people are going to see a reduction in their food. And that's going to impact the families where these kids are, and it's going to impact our entire state's economy. This is an important step forward in helping to build a more resilient system in the face of a system that is really reeling starting tomorrow, and we're going to have real challenges. So I urge a favorable vote and hoping to build a more stronger, resilient system for not only for our students, but for our entire state. Thank you very much.
The bill sponsor or the panel? All right, thanks for being with us. Looks like we have a number of in-person witnesses here still with us. I'll just call them in order. Steve Mandel.
Oh, you know what, Steve unfortunately has COVID, so.
Okay, sorry to hear that. We will read the written testimony. We have Corey Taveras, Isha Sase, and Samantha Zwirling. I think that's all the rest of the in-person witnesses.
Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chairman Chang, and members of the committee. My name is Coy Tavares, and I attend Parkdale High School in Riverdale, Maryland, and serve as the Student Government LGBTQIA+ Liaison. I'm here today to support HB 514, Maryland Meals for Achievement in Classroom Breakfast Program. First, I want to thank Delegate Solomon for being the lead sponsor on this bill, and the committee for giving me, a student leader, an opportunity to be heard. I strongly support this bill because my school does not have the funding for this program, but my peers and I would greatly benefit from the programs. My peers and I prepare for a rigorous 8-hour school day that often includes juggling multiple classes, exams, and other extracurricular activities, making breakfast a critical meal because it gives us the energy we need to focus on our schoolwork and our tests. Unfortunately, myself and many of my peers are unable to get to school on time due to unreliable transportation, which makes me and my peers late almost every day. As a result, many of us don't even consider getting breakfast because if we were to ask the staff, we would be subjugated, to ridiculing as to why we never attended school on time to begin with. Many of my peers face the same struggles as I do to get to school or have similar issues with transportation. Most of us don't get to eat breakfast at home or school, impacting our ability to learn and focus on school. Parkdale is also a school where more than 40% of students are free and reduced meals. If this bill passes, it would be one step closer to achieving equity in schools like mine that need it the most. This bill would allow us to not go hungry throughout the day by allowing us to eat breakfast after the school bell rings. It is for the reasons discussed that I ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
All
right. Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and members of the committee. My name is Aisha Sise, and I'm the president of the Prince George's Regional Association of Student Governments, student body president, and a senior attending Parkdale High School. And I'm happy here to provide testimony in support of House Bill 514, and I thank this committee for allowing me to speak on behalf of the students I represent in Prince George's County. I support this bill because it addresses an inequity that many other friends and student leadership are concerned about, ensuring that students who arrive late to school still have access to a quality school breakfast. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day is more than just a saying. It's the truth, and I have witnessed the negative impact and told that not being able to eat school breakfast has had on the academic performance of my peers, especially during test-taking days. And without breakfast, they lack the motivation to participate actively in class or complete class assignments. While some students make it to school on time to eat breakfast, an even larger population arrives late and is not allowed to eat once the first period bell rings. But what about those students that face barriers out of their control that prevent them from being able to eat school breakfast? At my school, the bell rings at 7:45 a.m., but there have been multiple times where students arriving on the bus didn't get to school until 8 a.m. And many times, students take metro buses to attend our school, and the bus schedule runs late, resulting the same outcome. And as a result, those students are told that they must rush to class and don't have time to eat breakfast. And I have many peers that rely on their parents to drop them off at school. And the same applies due to issues with their transportation. They won't be able to have breakfast. And in Prince George's County alone, where more than 40% of students are on free and reduced lunch, there are currently 176 schools in the county eligible for this funding, Parkdale being one of them, but there is only enough funding to cover 83 schools. Despite the various barriers preventing students from arriving at school on time to eat breakfast, an additional $4.5 million in funding will help eliminate all these barriers. And with that, I ask that you vote in favor of this bill. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Samantha Zwirling here on behalf of MSEA, representing 75,000 educators across the state of Maryland. That includes teachers, food service workers, and others working in our schools. We are here in strong support of this bill, and thank you to Delegate Solomon and Delegate Resnick, who are both working on, who both have a commitment to reducing food insecurity from our students. Thank you very much. The General Assembly and this committee has done a lot to address food insecurity in school meals over the past few years. And this bill would build off of an already successful program and fund it fully. I think you just heard from the students we have the need, but we need to make sure that we're fully able to fund it. This committee knows all too well that we've recently identified 110,000 new students who are eligible for free and reduced price meals. And so again, we know the need is out there for our students, but we need to make sure that we're actually able to fund the meals that they need to learn. This committee has also done a lot to support the blueprint and looking at ways that we can increase student achievement. But as you've heard from the first panel, hungry students can't learn. And so we've done a lot to increase support in other ways. This is the next step, is to making sure that our students are prepared to learn, they're able to take a test, and that they're able to absorb the information. So with that, I urge a favorable report from this committee and hope you will consider it favorably. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Whirling, just real quick, under this program, there is federal money that comes with it, right? So by passing, so thank you for referencing both bills. Obviously, I have the other bill. By passing this bill, and leveraging that federal money, that actually ends up helping reduce the fiscal note on my bill, which is being heard in Ways and Means. So both bills are absolutely critical, right?
That's why we're supporting both.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
See any other questions? Thank you all, particularly our students. Great job. Thank you. We have some virtual witnesses. Okay, good.
Hello, should I start?
Yes, sir, you can start. Go ahead. Just give us your name and welcome. You have 2 minutes.
All right, thank you. My name is Andres Guerra. I'm a junior at John F. Kennedy High School in Montgomery County and the president of my school's chapter of Students to End Poverty. I want to paint a picture of my morning at a school that offers free breakfast for all students. In the cold morning, I step out of the bus with no desire to be looking up at the doors of my school, but in a daze, I'm welcomed by my peers with open arms. As I see my friends and classmates eating together in the cafeteria, people from all backgrounds and ethnicities, I'm energized. These are my people. I feel a sense of solidarity that even though none of us want to be up this early, about to sit through 6 hours of lectures and assignments, we're going through all of this together. I often think about these brief moments in the morning when my day is made that much better by sitting down to enjoy breakfast with my friends. And as I've been researching this bill with my peers from across the county, I've realized what these experiences show about our government. For so long and so often, it seems as though we, the young, the undocumented, the low income, and the exploited, are thrown aside by our government, left to fend for ourselves. But this is the turning point. In almost every culture around the world, to cook for someone is to invite them into your home, to fulfill their basic needs. Government, to many, can appear to be this soulless machine that divides people into voting blocks and income brackets. But providing free breakfast to all students offers hope to a new generation. Hope for a generation that respects and does not divide. Hope for a generation that serves to serve. Hope for a government that cares about the nourishment of its citizenry. This policy is, simply put, good governance. It is an act showing that we are not purely guided by partisanship or power or prejudice, but by the well-being of those we serve and are meant to protect. To offer breakfast, community, and hope to students who would otherwise go hungry, we must expand this program to all high schools with substantial farm rates. We must give the most important part of the day to the most disenfranchised parts of our society. They will thank you for it.
Thank you so much. Great testimony. We appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you hearing it.
Thank you. Masoda, if I said that correctly, I apologize.
Hi, it's Masuda.
Masuda, great. Thanks for being
Yeah.
with us. Welcome. You have 2 minutes.
All right. Greetings. My name is Masuda Saduze, and I am a member of Students to End Poverty at Northwest High School in Montgomery County. I am submitting this testimony in support of HB 514, advocating that Maryland provides breakfast to all students attending low-income schools. Our country has always been proud of the American dream, the idea that anyone can succeed through hard work and self-determination. However, failing to feed public school students is fundamentally incompatible with that aspiration. I grew up in Queens, New York, where my family regularly relied on food stamps to make ends meet. Without those benefits, I don't know if I would be here right now speaking to the members of the Maryland General Assembly. I attended Public School 244, and there, food would be offered to every single student at no cost, regardless of their income. This policy meant that students were attending class nourished, focusing on the lesson and not when they would next be fed. The universality of the program ensured that there was no stigma associated with eating a school meal because everyone did. In 2020, pandemic-era food assistance allowed students to receive food benefits through the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Establishing this bill helped not just my family, but thousands of families all over New York City, which kept my family's worries to less about what was going to be in the dinner table at night. I don't just believe, but know that this bill will help reduce the stigma associated with free meals, greatly benefiting Maryland students. Students should never be ashamed whenever they look down at their plates. Instead, they should see a nutritious meal provided by the state. Schools serve as our second home, a place where we eat, learn, and build community. It is a violation of the spirit to deny hungry students all the resources they need. The legislature should work to remove barriers between the student and their education, not to perpetuate them. If New York already established free school food services for every individual, regardless of income, then why can't the state of Maryland do the same thing? In light of these facts, I respectfully urge this committee to return a favorable report on HB 514. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us. Great testimony. Ms. Figueroa. Thank you. Ms. Figueroa?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Appropriations Committee members. Thank you for allowing me to speak today in support of Maryland Meals for Achievement. My name is Samantha Figueroa, and I'm the Food Service Operations Manager for Caroline County Public Schools. I've been with the district for 15 years. In that time, I have seen our district go from having 2 MMFA schools to all 9 schools qualifying. This has been a huge achievement in Caroline County. We have had significantly higher breakfast participation that went from 29% to 65%, improved student attendance, and improved student behavior. There is no stigma attached to serving breakfast in our schools. Before MMFA, the students going to the cafeteria for breakfast were typically free students, and the majority of the students in the school knew it. There was often tardiness for students that went to breakfast in the cafeteria and then to their class in the morning. MMFA allows for immediate structure and routine in the classroom. All students get settled, receive their breakfast after the bell, and can begin their classwork. We've had less complaints of students going to the nurse in the morning with stomach aches due to hunger. In speaking with parents whose children do not qualify for free meals, they are grateful for this program. They often do not have time for their children to eat in the morning. Many in our district miss the free and reduced status by a few $100s a year. With MMFA, we know the student will have access to at least one meal a day, no matter of their meal status. Breakfast really does help to fuel the mind. It's very difficult to pay attention and be a successful learner when you're hungry. Thank you for your time. I hope you'll vote in favor to fund all schools that qualify for Maryland Meals for Achievement.
Thank you, and thanks for your testimony. Any questions for this witness? Delegate Grice has a question.
Hi, Sam. How are you?
Hi, Jeff.
All right.
No, I do have, I just wanted to expand on some of the other things that Caroline's doing as well.
Sure.
So fortunately for Caroline County, there's a tremendous partnership between the Culinary Arts School and the Board of Education when it comes to meal service. Can you just very briefly talk about that? And also, too, the community actually, they provide a lot of grassroots support for the Culinary Arts Center, too. You guys have big fundraisers and that sort of thing. Caroline County really is an anomaly in those regards. So I was wondering if you could just very briefly speak on that. And I'm hoping that other jurisdictions throughout the state would also have such community support for their meal programs and not just rely on, the state for that help.
We are very, very lucky with the participation we have from our local government and our school board. They're great. They work with us with everything that we need. We do have a culinary center in Caroline County that provides, we work very closely with farmers, and we bring in a lot of local produce into our school systems that a lot of school systems are not able to do. So that has been a huge program. We also process during the summer in our schools a lot of local fruits and vegetables that then are able to be put back into our school system during the school year when fresh and local is not growing. So we just have a lot of community partners. Being a small county, rural county, farming county, we help each other. And we're very lucky when you're small, being able to do such big things.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Have a great day. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 514. We're going to go a little out of order. I'm going to turn to the BRFA. We have our Secretary Grady with us, who needs to get to another meeting. So House Bill 202, the BRFA. Secretary Grady, welcome. And Delegate Paklakovich-Carr, I know you're here. We'll get right back to you next, okay? Thank you. Thanks for understanding. Welcome, Madam Secretary.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee, and apologies to the folks we bumped ahead of. Hopefully, this won't take too long. I'm Helene Grady, Acting Secretary for Department of Budget and Management, and I'm here with Mark Nicole, our Deputy Secretary for Budget and Management. We are here to testify in support of the administration's Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act of 2023. We have submitted written testimony, and hopefully you have a copy of that. I would flag quickly that we are proposing one amendment to the bill as introduced, and that amendment would repeal a provision requiring the repayment of the local reserve account over a 15-year period. Happy to share that appropriations included in the fiscal year 23 and 24 budgets complete the repayment early. And with that, we're happy to talk through any questions.
Well, you know we love a BRFA, so appreciate that. Any questions for our Secretary? All right. Doesn't seem like it. Seems pretty straightforward. Good luck at your next meeting. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
We have one witness. Brian Frazee from MHA is with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Brian Frazee, Vice President of Government Affairs for the Maryland Hospital Association, here in strong support of the BRFA. We want to thank Governor Moore for including a one-time $50 million reduction in the Medicaid deficit assessment in his fiscal '24 budget. That's really important for two reasons. Number one, it goes directly toward reducing patients' hospital bills. That assessment adds about 2% to every hospital bill in the state. It also artificially inflates healthcare spending. And right now we are about to enter renegotiations with the federal government on our total cost of care model. So right now is a critical time to demonstrating a reduction in that assessment. So we want to thank the governor for including it, and we urge the General Assembly to protect it in the BRFA. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Frazee? Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Great day. That concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 202. Now turn to House Bill 562. Delegate Paglavich-Carr.
And Mr. Chair, if it would be okay for me to bring up my three witnesses?
Absolutely. Bring your panel. Just please identify them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, colleagues. For the record, I'm Delegate Julie Polakovich-Carr, here to present House Bill 562. This bill will provide a monthly housing allowance for very low-income Marylanders who receive temporary cash assistance, TCA, and who don't have other government housing assistance. As we know, our governor has set a very ambitious and worthwhile goal of ending childhood poverty in our state, and I think we can be very proud of the work that we as a legislature, and especially this committee, has done in recent years in terms of investing in the kids of our state, including enacting the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, raising the minimum wage, expanding and enhancing the Earned Income Tax Credit, increasing TCA benefits, expanding SNAP benefits during the pandemic, and improving the Child Care Scholarship Program. And these are all important actions in terms of combating poverty in our state, but to fully give families the tools they need to climb the economic ladder and for their children to thrive, they also need stable housing. Housing choice vouchers, Section 8 vouchers, as well as public housing are an important part of our safety net here in Maryland and nationally, but those programs have been chronically underfunded at the federal level. And in fact, nationally, only 1 in 4 families who have children who are eligible based on their income for housing assistance actually receive it, 1 in 4. So families end up waiting an average of 2 to 5 years just to get a housing voucher. And in some of our most popular jurisdictions, the wait lists are currently closed because of the high volume of applications they've already received. So Baltimore City closed their wait list in 2019, Baltimore County in 2018, and Prince George's and Frederick County's wait lists have been closed since 2015. So all this adds up to a situation where here in Maryland, just 15% of TCA households live in subsidized housing. So what are families in poverty supposed to do? Simply put, TCA benefits are not enough to cover unsubsidized rent. In fact, the maximum TCA benefit is less than half of the fair market rent in our state. And so that's why we see families doubling up on housing. And in fact, there were more than 1,100 TCA recipients, households, last year who were homeless. So once a family is homeless, of course, it's that much harder for their breadwinner to hold employment, and it just perpetuates the cycle of poverty. So this bill is modeled on programs in 6 other states where they provide housing assistance specifically to families who receive cash assistance. Under this bill, eligible households would receive a monthly housing benefit of at least $350 for a household of 1, and an additional $100 for each additional household member. And TCA recipients who have other types of housing assistance, whether they live in public housing, have a Section 8 voucher, or some other program, would not be eligible under the bill. So I'm hoping that this session that we can, have a conversation and figure out how to best help these families. They really are the very lowest income families with children in our state who are experiencing housing instability or homelessness. We're just asking to give them some measure of stability and security in their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Lisa Klingenmeyer. I'm the Assistant Director of Advocacy at Catholic Charities of Baltimore, and I chair Welfare Advocates, which works for programs and policies that bring families up to economic stability. We're here today in strong support of House Bill 562 because we do believe this will make an effort in the reduction of homelessness and poverty among households with children in Maryland. Temporary cash assistance is our program for low-income children in the state. 70% of TCA recipients are children and their caretakers. Statutorily, we set the program at 61.25% of the Maryland minimum living level when combined with SNAP. So for a dollar value, a household of 3 is getting $727 a month. A household of 2 is getting $575 a month. Before I did policy work, I did casework. I'm a social worker, that's my training. And I can tell you that housing is the singular most difficult thing to obtain for any low-income household in the state. It is a Herculean effort to find housing, let alone trying to find housing at 30% of your income when your income is $727 a month. And at Catholic Charities, we see that every day. We run Sarah's House in Anne Arundel County, and we run Anna's House in Hartford County, and these are homeless shelters. And many of our recipients in these shelters are our temporary cash assistance families because they have not been able to find housing, and so they end up in family homeless shelters because that's the only way they can put a roof over their family's head on such a low income. So the intent of this bill is to try and bring families up something closer to the poverty line so they have a greater access and share of the rental market that's there so they can provide safe and stable housing for their children. We know that stable housing is a cornerstone of thriving families, and a thriving family means a thriving state. So we strongly urge a favorable report on House Bill 562, and thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Michelle Medeo. I'm Director of Economic Justice at the Homeless Persons Representation Project here in strong support of HB 562. At HPRP, we do a lot of things. We represent families who are experiencing homelessness and housing insecurity in different kinds of appeals. And so I know all too well from the families we've worked with how critical this is. It's extremely difficult, as the delegate said, to receive a federal housing voucher. The families we work with wait years just to be able to even get on the wait list. And then it's several more years to get off the wait list. Sometimes it's a lottery system, so there's no predictability about when you can actually get a housing voucher, depending on the need. Rent by federal standards is considered affordable if rent plus utilities makes up no more than 30% of the income. So when you look at the example that was given, TCA for a 3-person household is $727 at most per month. So affordable rent for someone who has $727 in income would be $218. So if we look at fair market rent for the counties where most of TCA recipients live, it's anywhere between $1,500 and $1,900 a month. And so it's no surprise that so many families are experiencing housing insecurity or homelessness, even though they're receiving TCA. Last year, 1,113 families that received TCA also experienced homelessness at some time. As the delegate said, other states have used their TANF funds to be able to provide a housing allowance in their TANF programs. Some of those states include Hawaii, Maine, Minnesota, Massachusetts, North Dakota, and Vermont. And so we would like to see Maryland also, we think this is a very good use of TANF funds, would like Maryland to also introduce a housing allowance as part of the TANF program. You'll hear today from some families who have made sacrifices to be able to share their experiences. There's also some compelling testimony in the file, and we urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Callie Shumitz. I'm with the Maryland Center on Economic Policy here in strong support of House Bill 562. People receiving TCA are among the lowest income Marylanders, and as you have heard, it is incredibly challenging for people receiving TCA to afford market rate housing. To put it, Maryland is the 9th most expensive state for renters. So to put that in context, someone who's earning the minimum wage would have to work 78 hours a week just to afford the average rent. TCA families are living on even less than that. When families struggle to afford rent, the resulting housing instability and periods of homelessness affects people's health. It can affect children's academic achievement and increases the likelihood of children being placed in foster care. The housing allowance proposed in HB 562 follows successful models from other states, and it would increase housing stability and economic security for TCA families, which will have lifelong benefits for their children. It also benefits communities as a whole and local businesses and our economy when families have a greater economic security and money to spend on necessities at local businesses. So for these reasons, we would ask for a favorable report on House Bill 562. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the bill sponsor or this panel? Thank you very much. Next, we have Witnesses Claudia Wilson Randall, Michael Rinderman, and Archie Carwell. If you could please come up. And 2 minutes for your testimonies, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair, members of the House Appropriations Committee. My name is Claudia Wilson Randall. I'm the Executive Director of the Community Development Network of Maryland, and I'm here today in strong support of House Bill 562. The mission of the Community Development Network is to promote, strengthen, and advocate for the community development sector throughout Maryland's urban, suburban, and rural communities. You've heard the earlier panel talk about the mechanics of this bill, in how it works and who it would serve. I just want to say that I think a lot of times when we talk about housing subsidies, we talk about people who are receiving housing vouchers. The great many of people in need of housing in our state do not receive a housing voucher, and this housing allowance is just a really critical tool that's needed throughout the state. I think often when we think of the high poverty, we think about high poverty urban areas of the state, but certainly we have seen an increase in need in suburban and rural areas and the challenges that those areas face, and also an incredibly tight housing market right now. So that makes it very difficult for families already facing housing instability to move to a new place. There just simply isn't any place for them to go with the funds that they have or don't have. I also would like to say that often we can talk about percentages of income and the mechanics of this, but we really need to focus on people in our state and create, if we're serious about creating opportunity in our state, it begins with housing. It's housing and education. The blueprint is not going to be able to do it all. We need to figure out ways to keep families in homes. And if we put $20 or $30 million in a school building, we're going to have to figure out how we stabilize the areas around those school buildings in order for those populations to be served by the school, not to be moving and housing unstable. It's also housing and economic development. If we want to attract jobs to our state, we're going to have to figure out ways to have people who can afford housing in those areas where jobs are. And finally, housing and health. We've seen a very tough 3 years of a pandemic. We have a lot of families who are at the very least facing health challenges, or at least, and we need to figure out how those families get to a place of health.
Thank you very much.
By stabilizing housing
for your testimony,
is the way to
ma'am.
do it. I think this is an excellent bill. Thank you so much to the sponsor for sponsoring it. And I urge your favorable report for House Bill 562. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Michael Rinderman, 2 minutes, please.
Yes, thank you. Honorable members of the Appropriations Committee, thank you for allowing me to speak to the importance of passing House Bill 562. My name is Michael Rinderman, and I'm a Rule 19 student attorney in the University of Baltimore School of Law's Civil Advocacy Clinic. The clients we serve in the clinic are often entirely reliant on public benefits, and so I am here today to speak in their support. The goal of House Bill 562 is to create opportunities for stable homes and support upward mobility for benefit recipients who have been left out of federal housing programs. Tens of thousands of Maryland families have been left out of these programs, and so they need access to housing assistance in order to participate in the private market. This bill will target those families who are not lucky enough to receive subsidized housing and give them a chance to maintain stability. Currently, Maryland does not have enough federally subsidized housing. Wait lists for spots, as we've heard, for Section 8 housing choice vouchers average more than 40 months, but there are jurisdictions in Maryland where the wait list is not taking any new names. According to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, there are around 180,000 Maryland families eligible for federal housing assistance, but only 100,000 units available. This leaves over 80,000 Maryland families out of subsidized housing and left to fend for themselves in the private market. These families need assistance fast. Benefits are too low to support a family in the current market. As we've heard, the maximum for a family is only $727 in TCA, and that is not enough money to split rent and costs of living. This bill would give an additional $350 plus $100 for each additional member of a household. With over 80,000 Maryland families left in a blind spot and little subsidized housing available, rent has become almost completely unaffordable for too many Maryland benefit recipients. For these reasons, the University of Baltimore School of Law Civil Advocacy Clinic urges you to vote in favor of House Bill 562. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Linderman. Are there any questions for Ms. Claudia Randall, members of the committee? Thank you. And just one more time, Ms. Carwell here. This afternoon, we have one member who is joining us virtually, and that is Tatiana Taylor. And Ms. Taylor, how are you doing? And Ms. Taylor, you could unmute yourself. Ms. Taylor, can you hear me? Could you unmute yourself? All right, thank you very
Okay,
much.
yes, I can hear you.
Great, great. Thank you very much for joining us virtually. You have 2 minutes. Thank you. Ms. Taylor, can you hear us? Ms. Taylor, could you provide your testimony? Speak into the microphone. Okay. All right, Ms. Taylor, we thank you. Can you hear us? Can you hear me? If you can, nod your head. Okay. Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Taylor, thank you very much for joining us. We're going to go ahead and take your written testimony. You can submit written testimony to us, but we thank you for being on, joining us virtually.
Too late, you say?
Okay, we can hear you now. Okay, don't touch nothing. Just go ahead and provide your testimony.
Okay, hi, my name is Katira Taylor, and I'm just speaking on behalf of the housing bill. I feel as though that the housing bill would be very important for a lot of people. Being a woman staying in a shelter now, just looking for extra help starting, or people, period, for at least 6 months to establish getting back on their feet, because a lot of people flee domestic violence all over, and we go through a lot with this. It's like a lot of people are still staying in shelters because they can't have multiple kids and still work. I have 5 children. It is very hard for me to just up and start new job and things like that when I had to leave everything behind. So even if it was something that they gave people for 6 months, it would just benefit. It would benefit so much to where as though, maybe it would give us an opportunity to get a new job. Maybe it would give us an opportunity to put our foot back in the water, because you never know what people are going through. And I just feel like it's very, very important for women, period, or, single families, period, to just have that extra help and just to know that they don't have to go around and beg, and we can just apply a social service for this extra help. I think that, this bill is very important to people. For people.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Taylor, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Have a great day. And that
You have a
concludes
blessed one. Thank you guys so much for hearing me.
You got it. You got it. Thank you. That ends the bill hearing for House Bill 562. The committee will now move on to House Bill 573, presented by Delegate Boaffa, Maryland Higher Education Commission Access to Mental Health Advisory Committee Establishment. Delegate Boaffa, thank you very much for being here. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Am I able to bring up my panel? Thank you. All right, well, let me get started while the rest of them come up here. Vice Chair Chang, members of the House Appropriations Committee, it's great to be in front of you. For the record, Delegate Adrian Bawafo here to present House Bill 573, the establishment of the Mental Health Advisory Committee through the Maryland Higher Education Commission. Now, for returning House Appropriation members, you guys may remember this bill from last year. HB 573 would require MHAC to appoint a committee to study the access to behavioral and mental services on Maryland college campuses. The overarching goal here is to make sure that we have uniformity within our mental health services provided at higher education institutions here in the state of Maryland. The scope of the work for that advisory committee includes studying the policies and procedures adopted by institutions of higher education in the state regarding access to mental health care and the prevention and treatment of mental illness in students, as well as examining the challenges for institutions of higher education in meeting the demand for mental health services. No matter if you attend the University of Maryland or attend St. Mary's College, our students deserve the best mental health services. I'm proud to say that this year, this bill, with sponsor amendments that each of you guys should have as well, has passed unanimously in the Senate. I encourage each of you here to read the powerful testimony from our students and organizers, especially from our former House member and Maryland's 8th Congressional Representative, Jamie Raskin, as well. With that, appropriation members, I do urge a favorable vote on HB 573.
Thank you very much, Delegate Bawafo, and whoever wants to go next, please. 2 minutes.
Start this one. Sure.
I'll keep it very short and sweet. This is John Tell with Maryland Association of Community Colleges. We'd like to thank sponsor Bawafo, members of the Appropriation Committee for supporting this bill. We, with Maryland's 16 community colleges, believe that mental health and behavioral health support services are very important. It's part of a lot of efforts going on right now, especially with COVID-19. Many students are suffering from mental health problems, and we are thankful to the sponsor for including us in this bill. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Barnes, Vice Chair Chang, and distinguished members of the Appropriations Committee. For the record, my name is Nicole Harlock, and I am the president of the University of Baltimore's Student Government Association. The University of Baltimore Student Government Association strongly urges you to support House Bill 573, establishment of the Maryland Higher Education Mental Health Advisory Commission. With the high and ever-increasing cost of medical coverage and healthcare services, students are feeling the cost of these impacts on their physical health, but also their mental health as well. For many students in higher education, basic healthcare services are out of reach due to lack of funds, and the aid that is offered through their schools is minimal at best. At the University of Baltimore, a majority of mental health services are provided through the Student Assistance Program by the Office of Student Support, which works through a third-party contractor to deliver mental health services to students. Through this service, students can access 5 free counseling sessions per issue, after which students are expected to pay out of pocket for these sessions, which is not always feasible for students who are struggling with conditions such as depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues that require long-term support. Taking a deeper look at funding allocated towards mental health services for students in higher education throughout the university system of Maryland will help to create a more equitable and inclusive access to services for college and university students. The establishment of this committee is the first step in the process to uplifting the students in the university system of Maryland to being the best versions of themselves and making the positive changes in the state that this body sets out to do each day. It is for these reasons that the University of Baltimore Student Government Association asks for a favorable report on House Bill 573.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Isha Yardi, and I'm the Director of Health and Wellness at the University of Maryland Student Government Association. I've worked extensively over the past 3 years with our university's counseling center and behavioral health services to better understand the landscape of mental health on our campus. Since our return from virtual learning, we've seen a tremendous increase in the need for accessible and timely mental health resources on campus. The pandemic has created a number of unprecedented personal and academic challenges for college students, and now more than ever, we require the active support of mental health infrastructure on campus. As a student myself who interacts intimately with these systems of care, I am a first-hand witness to the need for targeted, expert-driven guidance on how to improve mental health in College Park and beyond. House Bill 573 recognizes the urgent need for research around mental health resources that resonate with students' needs and will hopefully expedite system reform by creating a framework for best practices to be developed and disseminated. Students should feel unequivocally supported by the resources available to them on campus, especially in the wake of a national youth mental health crisis. This bill is a crucial step in the right direction to improve the mental health of college students in Maryland. I respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 573. Thank you so much.
Mr. Vice Chair and members of the Appropriations Committee, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Caroline Thorne, and I'm the Director of Government Affairs at the University of Maryland Student Government Association. We are strongly in support of this bill because over the last decade, counseling centers across the state of Maryland and across the country have really experienced an unprecedented increase in the demand for mental health services. In College Park, between 2016 and 2019, our counseling center saw a 26% increase in students seeking mental health services. And this is prior to the pandemic. So as you can imagine, with the pandemic, this number has really increased. Speaking as a student from personal experience who has suffered from mental health circumstances, booking a counseling appointment can be really difficult and time-consuming. Last year, I was told due to high demand, appointments are only released in batches every 2 weeks. And I should call at 8 a.m. and then call and call and call, even if the call fails, just until they pick up. Ultimately, I did not get an appointment through this way. And though I was able to locate outside resources, it shouldn't be expected that every student can do the same. The system as it stands is a barrier to students seeking help. I'd just like to emphasize that mental health is just as important as physical health, and at university, students are far away from their parents, their homes, and their usual support systems. This bill is a necessity, in my opinion, because it acknowledges that this is a problem across the state and that there's no one-size-fits-all solution for each school. Supporting mental health resources is also a return on investment for the state of Maryland, as it ensures that students can attend university in the best state they can and then join the workforce afterwards. I respectfully request a favorable report on this bill. Thank you.
And Seekett with the NCADD Maryland, and also Sadi Davis with MHAC. If you could please state your name and 2 minutes, please. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Vice Chair and committee members. I am Dr. Emily Dow. I'm the Assistant Secretary for Academic Affairs at the Maryland Higher Education Commission. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. You have my testimony. We are in support of this bill with a handful of amendments. 3 of those suggested amendments center around the composition of the advisory council, in particular including a student on the advisory council. We find that it's very important to have the student voice in these conversations, and that this advisory council could benefit greatly from that. We also, a 4th amendment would be to change the reporting requirements. I'll stop there. I would also like to introduce our student commissioner, Sade Davis. She is a student at Prince George's Community College and serves on both our MHEC Student Advisory Council and is the student voice on the MHEC Commission. With that, we're happy to answer questions.
Dr. Dow and Ms. Davis for being here. Next.
Oh, hi. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Ann Geddes. I'm the Director of Public Policy with Maryland Coalition of Families. MCF provides family peer support and navigation services to families who care for a child, youth, or adult with behavioral health challenges. We also support a young adult peer group of 18 to 25-year-olds called Taking Flight, comprised of young adults with behavioral health challenges, to which I am an advisor. I'm here in strong support of House Bill 573 with amendments. In the course of working with these young adults, I have heard many stories of struggles to access mental health services on college and university campuses, either very long waits or only being able to receive a very limited number of visits before being told they must seek continued services off campus. This at a time when 1 in 3 students report having a mental illness and 1 in 4 report having seriously considered suicide in the past month. The demand for behavioral health services at college and universities is tremendous and resources are limited, creating an untenable situation. This problem is not unique to Maryland institutions of higher education. Innovative strategies have been implemented at colleges and universities across the country. A statewide advisory committee is necessary to study and try to address some of these many issues. An ancillary concern is in the proposed amendment. College and universities must think about how to promote help-seeking behavior for students who are experiencing a drug overdose or alcohol poisoning. Protections could be established that would hold harmless a person calling for help in the event of a substance use crisis, as well as the person who themselves is experiencing the crisis. The amendment would have the advisory committee study this additional issue of critical importance on campuses of higher education. Therefore, we urge a favorable report on House Bill 573. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Ann Seacott, testifying on behalf of the Maryland chapter of the National Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence. We thank the sponsor for bringing this bill. We support the bill. We would like to add an amendment. It's in the written testimony. And as Ms. Geddes just said, it is about adding a purpose to the commission, the advisory council, to look at the response a school has when there is some kind of medical emergency due to drugs and alcohol, so that the students, these young adults, are encouraged to call for help. In criminal law, we have something in Maryland called a Good Samaritan law, where if someone overdoses, that person and the person who calls for help doesn't get in trouble for a limited number of offenses. It's so that folks aren't scared to call 911. Same thing here. When that frat house is throwing a party and someone's had too much to drink and they're passed out on the couch in the basement and nobody wants to call because they're afraid of the trouble they will get in, and that can cause somebody to lose their life. So we just want the colleges and universities to take a look at these kinds of policies that result in some sort of disciplinary action related to academics or housing or things like that, so that these young adults are not scared to call for help. So with that and these amendments, we'd love the bill. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Ms. Seacott. Did you want to say anything, Ms. Davis? Would you like to say anything?
No, not at the camera.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. Very much appreciate it.
for having
Thank you,
me.
ladies, for being here. And we have a couple virtual witnesses. First, we do have questions, okay. For the panel, Delegate Edelson.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. So my question is actually for the bill sponsor as a result of these amendments.
Sure, is bill sponsor here? Bill sponsor?
No.
Yes. Delegate, I just wanted to get your, in light of the amendments that we've just heard, I just wanted to propose amendments we've just heard. I'd like to get your position on those amendments.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, the Senate passed with sponsor amendments last week. Those sponsor, while I appreciate the Assistant Secretary being here and talking about this bill and the importance of it, one of the things that we actually put in the bill when I inherited it from last year was 3 students on the panel. So that amendment has been taken care of. In addition to the 2 other amendments that you've heard about the alcoholism and dependency on drugs and what's happening on our college campuses, while I believe that's an important issue, I don't know if this commission is the commission that should be studying that and evaluating it. In the sponsor amendments that we put in, this commission won't be reporting to the General Assembly and the governor every 2 years. Instead, it'll be one bulk report. That bulk report, as you heard from the panelists earlier, really should be focused, in my opinion, on the student infrastructure, mental health that we have on our campuses. So I do think that we've addressed MHAC's concerns, and happy to work with the rest of the folks up here on a different bill, but I don't think that this is the bill to be focused on at that point. And again, the Senate didn't take up those amendments either, and I encourage this committee to do the same.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, next virtual witness we have is Samay Kindra.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you. Thank you for joining us virtually. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you to the Appropriations Committee for hearing my testimony today and for the delegate for introducing this bill. My name is Samay Singh Kindra. A little background, I previously served as the Director of Government Affairs for the University Student Body, College Park. I was also on the Baltimore County Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, and I was the chair of the Young Dems of Maryland Caucus of Color. I highlight these positions over the past 4 years because in each of these positions, we have worked tirelessly on this exact issue as it relates to mental health on college campuses, and specifically advocating for the creation of some sort of advisory body or council to deal with the systemic mental health issues we have on our campuses. I don't think it needs to be belabored about the issue of mental health for our students and why it's important, but really why this specific bill and body is important is because of the issues that at every step of the way in all of these roles when we've tried to address the issue, we've come across the same problems in just trying to identify the problem, and that is a structural gap, a transparency gap, and a problem with aggregation of data and resources across the university system. And that's really inhibited us at every step of the way, at every level we've tried to attack this issue, of truly understanding what the problem is. We know that there's an issue of access of mental health resources on campuses. We know that it disproportionately impacts students of color, but what we don't know is why and where the problem exactly lies. Is it the way in which we are reaching out to students? Is it the way in which we are funding our university resources? Is it a lack of support staff? All of these issues sort of remain out there, and it's hard to exactly tell where it lies because there is not, at the moment, a single coherent body that's dealing with this issue, establishing best practices, and really aggregating all the information and resources that we can possibly have to address the issue, which is what makes this bill and the body that's going to establish so important. It's going to give us one place where all this information is going to be looked at. We can establish best practices across the system and really make sure that we're identifying the problem where it lies.
Great. Thank you very much. We appreciate you joining us virtually. Next, we have Henry Miser.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the Ways and members of the Appropriations Committee. My apologies. For the record, my name is Henry J. Miser. I've had the pleasure of serving as the Student Commissioner on the Governor's Commission for Suicide Prevention since 2021. In this capacity, I represent all 900,000 plus students in primary and secondary schools in the state, but I also feel that my voice at the table is important to represent our students in post-high school and post-grad level education. And I'm here to testify in favor of House Bill 573. Now, this bill plays a key role in the implementation of quality mental health infrastructure in our Maryland higher education system. Every 2 years, the Governor's Commission puts out a report to the governor and lays out several goals that we hope to achieve and that the state should hope to achieve over the coming years. And this bill directly goes along with 3 of those goals, which are outlined in my written testimony. This commission is also innovative and forward-thinking in the sense that it allocates several different spots for student representation. After meeting with the sponsor, we were able to get an amendment which ensures that every student at every college, whether it be through the system of Regents, St. Mary's College, Morgan State, they all have a seat at the table. And this is really important because they are the biggest stakeholders in our educational process. It's their everyday lived experiences. Equitable access to mental health directly correlates with lower rates of death by suicide in students and young adult. This is a vulnerable population, and it's a population that we need to continue to serve with the best resources possible. So for these reasons and those outlined in my written testimony, I'd urge this commission to produce a favorable report, and I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Miser, for joining us virtually. That ends the bill hearing for House Bill 573. The committee will now move on to House Bill 601, presented by Delegate Forbes, State Police Retirement System, Law Enforcement Officers, Pension System, and Judges Retirement System, Surviving Spouse Benefits, Same-Sex Spouses. We have joining us Ms. Ann Gawthorpe on this bill. Delegate Forbes, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the Appropriations Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Kathy Forbes, giving testimony in support of HB 601. This bill addresses surviving spouse benefits for same-sex spouses for participants in the State Police Retirement System, the Law Enforcement Officers Pension System, and the Judges Retirement System. This bill is simply corrective. It addresses the inequities in our system that existed before same-sex marriage was legal. This bill benefits anyone in these three pension systems who named their same-sex partner as a survivorship beneficiary before same-sex marriage was legal, then after it became legal, married that same individual. These individuals have not been given the spousal benefits that other retirees in these systems enjoyed. If this bill passes, these benefits will be retroactive to the date of their retirement. Had their spouses been recognized as a legal spouse at the time of their retirement, they would not have had to take a reduction to their basic allowance to provide a survivorship benefit to their partner. This bill deserves your support if you believe that all state police, law enforcement officers, and judges deserve fair and equal treatment in the administration of their pensions. I'm happy to answer questions. I thank you for your time, and I ask for a favorable report.
Thank you very much, Delegate Forbes, for presenting the bill. Ms. Gawthorpe?
State Retirement is not taking any position on this bill, but I did want the committee to know that we work very closely with the sponsor and committee staff on the drafting of the bill.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Gawthorpe. Are there any questions from members of the committee for Delegate Forbes or Ms. Gawthorpe? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 601. The committee will now move on to House Bill 581. Delegate Morgan, State Employees Retirement Health Benefits Credible Services Historic St. Mary's City Commission. Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. Good afternoon. I'm here to present to you House Bill 581, Credible Service for Historic St. Mary's City, for your consideration. This is a bipartisan bill supported by the St. Mary's delegation, and it was heard last week in the Senate. This bill allows employees of the Historic St. Mary's City Commission to include 11 years of service credit to the Optional Retirement Plan, ORP, to instead be credited to the Maryland State Employee and Retirement Health and Welfare Benefits Program. The years of service credit to the ORP were counted in error due to the belief by HR that Historic St. Mary's City was affiliated with St. Mary's College of Maryland. So while they are adjacent, they are two totally separate organizations. The purpose of the action is so that the full cumulative years of service are counted towards the calculation for retirement and benefits. Testifying before the committee today are Portia Purves and Ruth Mitchell, friends of mine, employees of St. Mary's HSMCC, to explain the issue from their personal experience. Their testimony is also within the record. I ask for your favorable consideration for this bill.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Delegate Barnes and committee members. Thank you also to Delegate Morgan. Thank you to Regina Fodden for all of her leadership and perseverance with this situation. As I understand, the purpose of the bill is to determine credible service eligibility for state retiree health benefits for employees working at Historic St. Mary's City. We have acted on this for 12 attempts, and in 12 years, we've still not gotten anywhere, so this is a huge step for all of us. You'll see in my testimony that we were in the state pension system. When we affiliated with St. Mary's College, we were included in all of their benefits. Through investigation, it was determined that Historic St. Mary's City is not an educational institution based on IRS rules. The employees were not authorized to participate in the optional retirement plan. We were then forced out and put into the state retirement system as brand new employees. So any time vested in the system was counted back to zero. The important point addressed in the current legislation is that the purposes of the retiree health insurance and state subsidy for insurance for employees of Historic St. Mary's City who were erroneously enrolled in the ORP. Years of service in both the employee's pension system and the ORP would be combined to determine eligibility for the retiree health benefits and subsidy. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. My name is Ruth Mitchell. Thank you, committee, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Delegate Morgan, for supporting this and examining this bill, 581. I feel very lucky because I get to work as an archaeologist. I was hired by St. Mary's City in 1999, and I've continued working there until today. If you were to open up my retirement portfolio on the fancy online system we all now have, it says that I only have 14 years of service, when indeed I have 23 years of service. We hope that if this bill were to pass, that would help rectify that discrepancy. Thank you for your consideration.
Questions from members of the committee for the bill sponsor or the witnesses? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 581. The committee will now move on.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Committee will now move on to House Bill 654, presented by our Appropriations Committee member, Delegate Heinball. This is the Community Colleges Capital Project State Share Adjustment.
Thank you, Vice Chair Chang and fellow members of the Appropriations Committee for giving me the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 654. For the record, I am Delegate Jim Heinball. I represent District 1A. For those of you not familiar with that, that includes all of Garrett County and the western portion of Allegheny County. This legislation would change the funding formula that determines the state and local cost share for capital projects for community colleges under certain circumstances. It doesn't change the funding formula across the board. There's just certain qualifiers where it will change. This bill has no fiscal impact at the state level, but as I'm going to explain, it's very, very important to Garrett County. You won't see in the bill, you won't see the term Garrett County or Garrett College, but with full disclosure, Garrett College is the only community college that will benefit from this bill. And if approved, this bill would change the funding ratio between the local and state share for capital projects for Garrett College. It's currently 50-50, 50 from the county, 50 from the state. This would change that to something closer to 70-30. I know it's been a long afternoon, but I'd like to, if you bear with me, I'd like this to take a couple minutes to explain to you why I submitted this bill and why it's important. Garrett County, while I'd be the first to tell you, is a beautiful place to live, it's a relatively poor county by state standards. Statistically, it's the second or third poorest county in the state by most traditional measures of wealth, per capita income, median household income, people living in poverty, et cetera. Several years ago, the county's leadership got together and conducted a SWOT analysis to look at what kind of things could they do to improve the economy so we'd be more independent and more successful. One of the findings was that the county trailed some of the more successful affluent jurisdictions in educational attainment. Back in the day, to the county commissioner's credit, they recognized that Garrett College was the key to fixing that. So they embarked on a pretty serious program to invest in capital improvements at Garrett College. In fact, over a 15 to 20-year period, they invested somewhere between $25 and $30 million in Garrett College. In addition to that, they created a scholarship program that gives every child, every student that graduates from high school in Garrett County 2 years of free tuition at the community college. They've been doing that since 2007, I think, and so far they've spent about $8 million doing that. The problem is that the county's now faced with other obligations, bigger demands on their financial resources, and in fact, they're in a situation where they're about to close some schools, so it becomes more difficult to make large capital investments in the college at the same time as they're closing public schools and doing some other things. So this bill, by changing the funding formula to 70-30, would allow the college, or would allow the county to leverage its money more to continue some of the improvements and the upgrade of the Garrett College campus. It's worth noting that the Maryland Association of Community Colleges Council of Presidents voted unanimously to support this change. So it's which kind of surprised me, but I think that's really, really great news. You have written testimony from the county commissioners, the college board of trustees, and the president of Garrett College, Dr. Richard Midcap, who's here today. Thank you for your time, your patience, and consideration. That concludes my testimony, subject to any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Delegate Heinball, for presenting your first bill before the House Appropriations Committee. Are there any questions from the committee? All right, we've got a lot of questions here. We've got a lot of questions. Great job, great job. Are there any real questions for our gentleman from
By
Garrett?
the way, I did not invent that funding formula. That some of you were in appropriations probably recall, I think it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that funding formula was used to change the ratio on public school capital projects. So it's been done and it works, and I couldn't, I went to Southern High School, so I wouldn't be able to come up with a formula like that. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Delegate Heimel, and congratulations on presenting your first bill before the Appropriations
Thank you,
Committee.
sir.
Next, we'll have, that ends a bill hearing for House Bill 654. Next, we'll have House Bill 701, presented by Delegate Kipke, Maryland Community Health Resources Commission, Compensation Employees. Delegate Kipke, thank you for being here. Please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. I have Raina Patolia, who is my intern this session, who will be giving my testimony. She finished top of her class at Chesapeake High School, where I graduated, and she's now in a very rigorous program at College Park. Very proud of her, and in case there's any questions, the tough ones go to Mark Luckner. But with that, we'll have Raina present on my behalf.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Raina. I'm Delegate Kipke's intern this session, and I'm pleased to present House Bill 701. The Maryland Community Health Resources Commission was created in 2005 with widespread bipartisan support. The CHRC is responsible for providing grants to expand high-quality access to health care for underserved populations. The Commission has awarded funding in all 24 jurisdictions and served over 120,000 Marylanders since 2005, including those of low income and those facing barriers in receiving health care. To highlight, the CHRC focuses on two main goals. First, the Commission reinforces the Maryland Health Equity Resource Act to address health disparities across the state. Additionally, the Commission supports the Maryland Consortium on Coordinated Community Supports, which helps provide coordinated behavioral health services for children K through 12. In the previous 2 years, legislation has significantly increased the responsibilities of the Commission. For instance, they have almost tripled staff from 4 to 10 members and boosted grant funding exponentially from $8 million to over $100 million. The Maryland Community Health Resources Commission has been actively recruiting a project director for over a year without success. House Bill 701 is critical because it will allow the Commission to attract a highly diverse and talented pool of candidates. HB 701 will give CHRC greater authority in determining salaries for positions in consultation with the State Budget Office. Furthermore, this bill will enable the Commission to have more speed and tools in the tool chest to fulfill legislative responsibilities. And for these reasons, we urge a favorable support.
Great, thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Luck, if you'd like to provide testimony.
Thank you. I would just thank Delegate Kipke for introducing this bill. It's been great to work with you over the years, Delegate Kipke. It's great to be before the House Appropriations Committee. And I thank Delegate Resnick for being a great subcommittee chair. Thank you. And it's good to see the majority leader. I'd be happy to answer any questions about 701, which has no fiscal note.
Great. Thank
you,
you.
Mr.
Delegate
Chairman.
Metzger has a question, I think.
I'm going to ask the former question of a colleague. What problem are we trying to fix?
They can't hire people. The current process is sort of bureaucratic. This process that would give them the authority in consultation with the budget secretary will allow them to more expeditiously make the decisions needed for things like salaries. Other independent commissions have this authority. It's, I'm not exactly sure why it wasn't originally set up this way. It was a very small commission until recent years, and the legislature gave them more responsibility.
Yep, Delegate Resnick. Thank you. Actually, something Delegate Kipke you just said sparked something in my head. You said that the other independent commissions do have this authority. We just added a new commission to our independent commissions, which is the Drug Affordability Board. Do we know if that commission also has this authority?
I have to get back to you on that. Other commissions like the HSCRC have it.
Right, HSCRC, MHCC, and then, so because we have a new one, so I'm wondering if we may want to take the opportunity to just fix a problem into the future.
I'll look into it and get back to you.
Yeah. If you like, I can. Go ahead. So we had our AG look at the language that the HSC, Health Services Cost Review Commission of Maryland Healthcare Commission have had for a number of years, so we mirrored that language. But on your point, Mr. Chairman, we could look at what other agencies have, like, for example, the Health Benefit Exchange has a little bit different authority, so we thought, since we act the most like the HSCRC and Healthcare Commission, we went with that. But if your committee wants has other language or other ideas that would get the same objective, which is to recruit a highly diverse and talented pool of candidates and fill these vacancies, which are burning a hole, in the budget, we'd like to do that. We're open to any language that you want to suggest.
Any other questions? Delegate Kipke, great to see you in Appropriations.
I think it's a first.
Yeah.
Good to see you, too.
Me too. Mark, good to see
Good
you.
to see you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks for being with us. We will turn to our last bill, Delegate Watson, House Bill 674. I think you have somebody here for questions, and I think Rebecca Flores is here as well. I know Mr. Redding will be behind you in case there's any questions.
Good afternoon, committee, Chairman Barnes, Vice Chairman Chang. Thank you for allowing me to present House Bill 674, which will ensure that the currently underutilized historic preservation loan program can be used effectively to help further fund important preservation efforts in Maryland. The laws and programs that we pass here, as you know, are only as good as can be executed by the different departments or agencies that oversee them, and the Historic Preservation Loan Program is no different. Due to the bureaucratic hurdles and other difficulties, MHT, or Maryland Historic Trust, has been unable to fully utilize the Historic Preservation Loan Program to its full potential. The legislation as drafted was introduced to abolish the loan fund and transition it into a partnership program and fund to be operated by a qualifying nonprofit organization, with the goal being that the nonprofit will be more efficient in getting money out the door. But after meeting with both MHT and Preservation Maryland, we have found a solution that satisfies both parties. The amendment, which you have, will keep the loan program active and instead authorize MHT to make an expenditure to a qualifying nonprofit as defined in the bill to facilitate preservation dollars getting provided more efficiently. I respectfully request a favorable report on the bill, and I have with me today Ms. Rebecca Flora from Secretary of Planning and the Maryland Historic Trust. No.
She had a family situation. She's not able to be
Okay.
here.
We also have Nick Redding here to answer any questions, although he is not testifying.
Hi, thank you, Delegate, for sponsoring this bill, and thank you to all of you and to Chair Barnes for this. The Department of Planning, with the amendments, are in favor of the bill, and I think the most important aspect of this is to create added flexibility, the ability to actually move these funds where they're needed faster, but do that in partnership, so we can still assure that the systems that we need in place are there, and to just keep this loan fund. You never know where the market's going to go in the future, so the ability to leave it intact as proposed through the amendment, form the partnership, and allow for qualifying nonprofits to be able to basically be a conduit also are the key aspects of this, and we are in favor as the amendments have been included.
With us. Are there any questions for the bill sponsor, Secretary, Mr. Redding? I don't see any.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for being with us. I think that concludes our bill hearing. Adjourned.